Chapter 409. The He clan had a history of more than 700 years. It was a top-notch clan that was more than 10 times stronger than the three major clans of Fuyang City combined. Therefore, even though the He clan's headquarters, Jadeite Mountain Villa, sounded ordinary with the word villa in its name. However, the Jadeite Mountain Villa was almost as big as Fuyang City. Junior sister He Ting. According to the He clan's strength, history, and territory, how could there be so few people in the clan? The Black Bear came to a beautiful valley. Yu Haoran asked in confusion as he looked at the endless courtyards and pavilions in the valley and felt the rich spiritual chi of heaven and earth in the valley. After all, even for the unranked Yu clan, the number of direct descendants, branch descendants, and servants in the clan added up to more than 10,000 people. However, the total population of the exterminated He clan was less than 2,000 people. Yu Xixiao. Our He clan walks the path of the elite. If a descendant of the clan has an average performance in the talent test when they come of age, then they will be arranged to work in some of the clan's businesses outside the clan. They will be allowed to work to support themselves. Even the talented clansmen who stay in the Jadeite Mountain Villa have to be able to support themselves. Therefore, even if we are direct descendants with outstanding talents and potential, we don't have any maids or servants to serve us. We have to do everything ourselves. He Ting explained in detail. I see. Hearing the He clan's way of training their disciples, Yu Haoran couldn't help but nod his head in praise. No wonder your He clan has a history of more than 700 years. This method of training your disciples is really good. Even though the He clan was exterminated not long ago, the loss of all lives in an instant caused the entire valley, or rather, the entire Jadeite Mountain Villa, to be filled with an extremely oppressive atmosphere. Looking at the half-open door of the villa, the He sisters revealed a sorrowful expression on their faces. Fortunately, they had already experienced it once. They quickly put away the sorrow in their hearts and reached out to push open the door of the villa. It was the He sisters' duty to bury the dead and rest in peace. However, in order to find out who the murderer of the He clan was, the He sisters did not touch the corpses in the villa. Therefore, Yu Haoran saw corpses lying everywhere in the villa as he pushed open the door. Inside the villa, other than the corpses that were strewn all over the place, Yu Haoran unexpectedly smelled a familiar scent. And this familiar smell very likely had a lot to do with the He clan being exterminated. Stepping into the villa, Yu Haoran began to observe the wounds on the corpses as well as the messy footprints on the ground of the villa. Just by observing the 30 corpses, Yu Haoran could basically confirm that the culprits who annihilated the He clan should be a group of bandits. Moreover, through the footprints left on the ground, Yu Haoran knew that this group of bandits was not only powerful, but also had been established and existed for a very long time. Combining all the clues left at the scene, 3 suspicious targets appeared in Yu Haoran's mind. However, if he wanted to rule out 2 of the suspects, he needed to investigate further. Junior sister He Ting, may I know who the strongest person in your He clan is? If he wanted to determine which of the 3 bandit factions did it, he needed to know who the strongest bandit was. Therefore, Yu Haoran hoped to confirm it through the corpse of the strongest person in the He clan. It's my grandfather. He Ting's voice unconsciously revealed a trace of arrogance. Before the incident, my grandfather was already a peak 9th grade Martial King. Recently, he was preparing to break through to the Martial King realm. Can you bring me to see your grandfather's corpse? Yu Xixiang this way. Nodding their heads, the He sisters brought Yu Haoran directly to the easternmost part of the villa, to a medicinal field with extremely dense spiritual chi. At the edge of the medicinal field, there was a simple wooden house built with a wooden tower. Yu Xixiang, my grandfather once said that the greatest enemy in a cultivator's life is actually himself. The easiest way to destroy one's will is to indulge in luxury and enjoyment. Therefore, he built a wooden house by himself on this side of the medicinal field and spent most of his time cultivating here. Pointing at the wooden house in the medicinal field, He Ting's voice was filled with deep respect as she introduced it. As the saying goes, it's easy to go from frugality to extravagance, but difficult to go from extravagance to frugality. For an old man like him to be able to restrain his greed for enjoyment and maintain the most ordinary life, he is indeed worthy of our admiration and learning. After hearing He Ting's introduction, Yu Haoran sincerely praised. Thank you, Yu Shixiang, for your praise. Hearing Yu Haoran's heartfelt praise for their grandfather, the He sisters felt very happy. Junior sister He, where is your grandfather's corpse? After looking around, not to mention a corpse, there was no trace of a fight at the scene. Yu Shixiang, come with me. Faced with Yu Haoran's question, He Ting did not explain too much. She only brought Yu Haoran to the wooden house. He Ting stood in front of the wooden house for a while before pushing the wooden door open. Battle of Divine Senses. Looking at the white-haired old man sitting cross-legged on the wooden bed with a peaceful expression, Yu Haoran did not need to examine carefully to know the true cause of the old man's death. However, if he wanted to know the opponent of the white-haired old man in the Battle of Divine Senses, he would have to trouble Thaling to use the power of his soul to make a more detailed judgment. Stepping into the wooden house, the familiar smell became even stronger. Following the direction of the smell, Yu Haoran saw a fist-sized piece of light yellow metal on the bookshelf on the east side of the wooden house. Dark gold stone. Ignoring the white-haired old man sitting cross-legged on the wooden bed, Yu Haoran walked straight to the wooden shelf. Yu Haoran's unexpected action also attracted Thaling's attention. After seeing the light yellow metal on the wooden shelf, she could not help but exclaim. The dark gold stone was a very special material. It could be used to refine magic tools, and it could also be used as an auxiliary medicinal ingredient to refine pills. It could also be used to set up formations and draw talismans. Therefore, dark gold stone had another name, which was Mother Stone. Junior sister He Ting, where did this material come from? Pointing at the dark gold stone on the wooden shelf, Yu Haoran asked. Yu Shixiang, our He clan has a total of 2 gold mines, 3 silver mines, and 1 bronze mine. As for which mine this light gold stone came from, I'm not very sure. After carefully examining it, He Ting shook her head. She was also unsure of the true origin of the dark gold stone. Yu Shixiang, although all the direct descendants of the clan have been killed, the people in charge of the 6 mines are fine. Just as Yu Haoran planned to personally visit the 6 mines to confirm the true origin of the dark gold stone, Yu, who had been standing outside the door, suddenly spoke. If Yu Shixiang wants to know the true origin of this stone, I can use a special method to inform the people in charge of the mines to come here. Then I will trouble junior sister Yu. Yu Haoran nodded happily. Chapter 410. Jadeite Mountain Villa, inside the wooden house. Junior sisters, this light golden stone is called the dark golden stone, also known as the Mother Stone. It is a special material with all-purpose properties. Not only does it have a wide range of uses, but it is also very rare. Yu Haoran pointed at the dark golden stone on the bookshelf and introduced it in detail. This is a fist-sized dark golden stone. If it were to be auctioned, it could be sold for at least 1 million 7th level first-rank spirit stones. Therefore, I suspect that the annihilation of the He clan has a lot to do with this special stone. Yu Shixiang, I will immediately inform the person in charge of the mine and have him return to Jadeite Mountain Villa as soon as possible. This seemingly ordinary stone was not only valuable, but could also be the real reason for the annihilation of the He clan. After hearing Yu Haoran's explanation, Yu did not dare to delay. He immediately turned and left the wooden house. Then, he used a special method to inform the person in charge of the mine. After he left, Yu Haoran slowly walked to the white-haired old man who was sitting cross-legged on the wooden bed and carefully looked at him. Based on appearance alone, the white-haired old man in front of him was probably not young. However, from the raging waves of qi and blood in his body, his cultivation was advancing by leaps and bounds. In other words, if there were no accidents, the white-haired old man would definitely break through to the martial emperor realm. Thaling, it's up to you now. Yu Haoran instructed as he communicated with the Thaling in his knowledge sea. Yu Haoran, the person who fought with this old man, has a cultivation at the peak of the 9th level martial king realm. He has the purest wood attribute physique, and his cultivation method is inclined towards the tempering of the soul. Thowling explained the details of the murderer through the remnant aura in the white-haired old man's knowledge sea. Moreover, through the remnant aura in the knowledge sea, I found that the murderer's divine sense has a trace of feminine aura. She should be a woman. A woman. Originally, Howard could only rule out one of the three suspects based on the murderer's cultivation level, physique, and cultivation method. Now, through the last and most important gender characteristic provided by the Thowling, Howard was 100% sure who the murderer was. Now, they only needed to wait for the person in charge of mining to come and confirm the true location of the dark gold rock. Howard would immediately bring the Heath sisters to find the culprit and take revenge for the Heath family. It didn't take long, only about 3 minutes. He returned to the wooden house with a horrified look on her face. Shi Xiang, this is bad. I just used the family's special communication method to contact the person in charge of the mine, but I found that there was no response. I suspect that something has happened to the mine. There's no need to be suspicious. Something must have happened. Howard replied affirmatively, signaling Yu not to panic. Just a fist-sized piece of dark gold rock was worth millions of grade 7 spirit stones. How much dark gold rock could a mine that could produce dark gold rock be stored? In order to obtain the dark gold rock, the culprit had slaughtered more than 1,600 people of the Heath family. It was enough to say that the culprit valued the dark gold rock greatly. Therefore, Howard suspected that the group of bandits that slaughtered the Heath family should be at the mine that produced the dark gold rock. Junior sisters, I'll have to trouble you to bring me to each of the 6 mines to take a look. I suspect that the culprit that slaughtered your Heath family is most likely still in the mine. Okay, we'll bring you there now. Nodding, the Heath sisters hurriedly turned and left the cabin, heading straight for the manor's entrance. Howard, let them bring you to the gold mine with the highest yield. Just as Howard used his movement technique to catch up with the Heath sisters, Thowling suddenly reminded him. Junior sisters, please wait a moment. Howard called out to the Heath sisters who were rushing towards the Jadeite manor's entrance. Black Bear. After entering the valley, Black Bear was looking for a place to replenish his blood. After hearing Howard's order, he quickly appeared in the manor. Junior sisters, bring me directly to the gold mine with the highest yield in your Heath family. Jumping on Black Bear's back, Howard ordered. 300 miles east of the Jadeite manor, there are 7 connected mountains. That is the mine that produces the most gold and silver ores in our Heath family. Yu, who was more familiar with the family's resources, directly gave the specific location. Black Bear, use your fastest speed and rush to that mountain range. Howard hurriedly ordered. Roar! Black Bear howled towards the sky and instantly turned into a black light and disappeared from the manor. In just 5 minutes, Black Bear, who had used his fastest speed, arrived in front of the mountain range. Looking at the 7 mountains that were connected in a straight line, Yu, who had been to this mountain range more than once, quickly reminded them. Shi Xiang, the 3rd mountain is where the gold mine is located. Jumping off Black Bear's back, Howard thought for a moment and then said, Junior sisters, through the residual aura of the opponent's spirit in your grandfather's sea of consciousness, I suspect that the murderer who slaughtered your Heath family is very likely to be the Black Widow from Mount Shangshan. He Ting stared at Howard with her eyes wide open and asked in disbelief, What? The Black Widow, the leader of the Mount Shangshan 9 bandits. That's right. Howard nodded and confirmed. However, the Heath sisters' next reaction was beyond Howard's expectation. Impossible. He Ting shook her head and questioned. Shi Xiang, I'm not afraid that you'll laugh at me. The Mount Shangshan bandits that have been passed down for hundreds of years is actually composed of a part of our Heath family's collateral descendants. The leader of this generation's Mount Shangshan bandits is our aunt, Yu. What? The Black Widow is actually your aunt. The Mount Shangshan Black Widow, who had been a headache for the 100 Chi Gate, was actually the sister of the current patriarch of the Heath family, Yu, and He Ting's aunt, Yu. Howard also shouted in disbelief. However, after the shock, Howard had a question in his heart. In his previous life, after the 100 Gate was destroyed, in order to avoid those who were chasing after him, he once sneaked into Mount Xiangshan and became a bandit for 3 months. Although he joined for a short time at that time, his identity was only the most ordinary bandit, but fortunately, he just happened to participate in several big operations of the Mount Xiangshan bandits. It was through those large-scale operations that he found that the Mount Xiangshan bandits had an extraordinary origin and were inextricably linked with several top forces. Moreover, during those 3 months of bandit life, he found that the true strength of the Mount Xiangshan bandits was not inferior to the top third-rate sections. If someone could break through to the martial royal realm, or if an expert of the martial royal realm joined, then the Mount Xiangshan bandits would immediately have the strength of a second-rate sect. Although the He family had been passed down for a long time, their overall strength was barely squeezed into a third-rate sect and could not be compared with the strength of the Mount Xiangshan bandits. Therefore, what ability and strength did the He family have to support and suppress the Mount Xiangshan bandits? Originally, Yu Haoran planned to sneak into the gold mine alone with the Black Bear. After confirming the murderer of the He family and the production of the dark gold, or he would let the Black Bear kill everyone in the gold mine. Chapter 411. I have some personal matters to take care of today. The 5th chapter should be after 9 o'clock. My 2 junior sisters, here are 2 aura concealing pills. It can perfectly conceal your aura, making it easier for us to sneak into the gold mine without anyone noticing. Since he had already decided to bring the He sisters into the gold mine, Yu Haoran didn't think too much about it. He directly took out 2 pills from his storage ring and threw them to the He sisters. He also explained the effects of the pills. "Thank you, Yu Shixiao." After taking the pills, the He sisters thanked him. Waving his hand, Yu Haoran directly brought the He sisters into the mountain range. Due to the fact that this mountain range had the most gold and silver mines, the He clan spent over 10 years to clear out all the ranked exotic beasts in the mountain range. This allowed Yu Haoran and the He sisters to not encounter any trouble when they entered the mountain range. When they arrived at the mountain with the gold mine, Yu Haoran suddenly signaled for the He sisters to stop. "Yu Shixiao, what's wrong?" He Ting asked in a small voice. "What a strong smell of blood." Touching his nose, Yu Haoran said with a frown. This place was at least 5 miles away from the 3rd gold mine. If they could smell the smell of blood from such a long distance, it meant that there was a massacre in the gold mine. Moreover, the number of people killed was definitely a terrifying number. Could it be that all the people in the gold mine were killed? Although they didn't smell the smell of blood at first, under Yu Haoran's reminder, the He sisters carefully sniffed. Instantly, the pungent smell of blood caused their stomachs to churn, and they almost vomited on the spot. It should be. Nodding his head, Yu Haoran stepped onto the 3rd mountain peak. In front of the gold mine, in an empty space that had been cleared temporarily, a woman with wavy blonde hair and a green ghost mask was sitting on a bluestone rock. She was dressed in a tight black robe and had a green ghost mask on her face. In front of the blonde woman, there were 3 7th-grade Marshal King middle-aged men wearing green, black, and blue-tight clothes. Among them, a middle-aged man dressed in green was reporting respectfully. "Boss, our brothers who are proficient in mining have basically checked the amount of dark gold ore in the gold mine after 2 days and 2 nights of investigation." "Speak," the blonde woman said in a hoarse voice. "The total amount of dark golden ore stored in the gold mine has reached 3 million cubic meters. The total value is as high as several billion 7th-order first-grade spirit stones. With such a huge amount of storage and such a shocking value, both the middle-aged men in black and blue and the bandits standing guard around them couldn't help but gasp." Although the golden-haired woman was wearing a mask and her expression couldn't be seen, her breathing didn't change at all. It was obvious that she wasn't shocked by the huge amount of dark gold or, "When can we finish mining?" After the 2 middle-aged men in black and blue calmed down from their shock, the blonde woman continued to ask. "Boss, because the dark gold ore is scattered, the deeper we go, the more difficult it is to mine. Even if we don't care about the safety of the mine and use force to mine, I'm afraid it will take about 3 months, the man in green replied. "Too slow." The The blonde woman clearly wasn't satisfied with the mining time, so she ordered, "Green Emissary, send the second and third teams to the Wu clan in the southwest. Capture all the Wu clan's martial masters and martial grandmasters to mine the dark gold Oregon. What about the others?" the middle-aged man in green asked. "Kill." The simple word "kill" instantly caused the surrounding temperature to drop. "Yes," the middle-aged man in green responded and took a step back. His expression didn't change at all. Then, the middle-aged man in black stepped forward and reported, "Boss, when I sent people to Mount Qinglian to kill He Yu and He Ting's sisters, I found that they had already returned to the clan. When I chased them back to Jadeite Mountain Villa, I found that they had already entered the 100-Chi Gate. The first master had warned us not to provoke the 100-Foot sect for the time being, so we could only retreat for the time being. What's the follow-up plan?" the blonde woman asked without any change in her voice. "I've already contacted the Dark Knight through the black market. The Dark Knight has already issued a mission to kill He Yu and He Ting." Although the blonde woman's voice didn't change, the man in black knew that she was angry from her tightly clenched fist. Thinking of the blonde woman's terrifying methods, the middle-aged man in black replied with a trembling voice, his forehead covered in sweat, "The Dark Knight probably won't pay attention to two little girls who just broke through the martial master realm. They'll definitely use this mission to test the assassins who want to join the Dark Knight." The blonde woman muttered to herself as she raised a few strands of her blonde hair that had been blown away by the breeze. Then, her voice deepened as she directly ordered, "Black Emissary, immediately arrange for the 7th team to hide in Jadeite Mountain Villa. Then, you personally lead the tracking team along the path from Jadeite Mountain Villa to the 100-Chi Gate. You must kill the sisters." "Who is it?" Just after the blonde woman finished arranging the mission for the middle-aged man in black, she wanted to continue listening to the middle-aged man in blue's report. However, she unexpectedly felt a trace of aura fluctuation and reprimanded him with a sharp tone. Not far away from the green rock that the blonde woman was sitting on, in a low thicket, He Ting apologized softly with an apologetic look on her face. "Yu Shi Xiao, I'm sorry. It's okay. I'll have to meet her sooner or later anyway." Although he was a little angry that He Ting couldn't control her emotions and leaked her aura and was discovered by the blonde woman, he considered the special relationship between the blonde woman and the He sisters, as well as the blonde woman's cold-blooded order, just now. Although Yu Haoran was angry, he could also understand their mood change just now. "Let's go." Getting up and leaving the low thicket, Yu Haoran tidied up his clothes a little and then strode toward the blonde woman. "Who are you?" the blonde woman asked with a hint of surprise as she looked at the calm and steady young man walking toward her without a trace of panic. "I'm just a nameless junior. I'm afraid you've never heard of me, even if I tell you," Yu Haoran replied in a humble tone. Yu Haoran didn't want to expose his identity, lest he bring unnecessary trouble to the 100-Feet sect. There were too many suspicious points about the golden-haired woman with a mask on her face, and the forces behind her were too complicated. For this reason, he even let Black Bear use the means of flight to quietly hide on the peak. After all, the new leader of the 100-Chi Gate, Chu Zhongyu, was his senior. Unfortunately, although Yu Haoran didn't want to expose his identity, the blonde woman's next words caused Yu Haoran's expression to change uncontrollably. "I see that you're only 17 years old, but you're able to calmly face me, a black widow who kills without batting an eyelid as a 5th-grade martial master. In this radius of tens of thousands of kilometers, it seems that only Yu Haoran from the 100-Chi Gate's Qinyan Peak can do this," the blonde woman said with a smile. "Since you've already guessed my identity, I can't continue to hide it." Since she had already seen through his identity, Yu Haoran didn't care if it would cause trouble for his senior. He straightened his back and reintroduced himself. Chapter 412. Who was Yu Haoran? He was someone who would never allow himself to be taken advantage of. Since you, Black Widow, didn't guess Yu Haoran's background, then I will directly reveal your background. Let's see who will be more shocked. It seems that the He clan's 2 little girls trust you quite a bit. They actually told you such a secret," He Ryu said while gnashing her teeth as she coldly glanced at the He sisters standing behind Yu Haoran. Yu Haoran was secretly delighted at Yuru's hatred. However, he pretended not to see it and pointed at the hundreds of corpses piled up nearby. His voice was filled with anger as he questioned her. Senior, among those people are your uncles, your brothers and sisters, and even your juniors who respected you. Why did you mercilessly slaughter them? Why? Hiruyu's gaze followed the direction that Yu Haoran was pointing at and suddenly laughed loudly. However, from the sadness in her laughter and the few drops of tears that fell from the corners of her eyes, Yu Haoran knew that her relationship with the He clan was not as close as Yu and He Ting imagined. Yu Haoran, although your cultivation is only a 5th grade martial master and your identity is only an ordinary disciple of the 100 Chi Gate, you are able to use a secret transformation technique to suppress a martial king expert. Furthermore, you are able to use various trump cards and methods to forcefully send your eldest senior to the position of Gate Master. You have the qualifications to be on equal footing with me, the Black Widow. After laughing hysterically, Hiryu did not explain why she wanted to slaughter the He clan. Instead, she ordered the black-clothed middle-aged man, "Go and bring over an identical rock." Yes, not daring to be negligent. The black-clothed middle-aged man quickly brought over an azure rock and placed it in front of Yu Haoran. "Sit." Hiryu gestured with her hand and said. Yu Haoran walked in front of the azure rock and sat on it like Hiryu. Yu Haoran stared straight at her. Yu Haoran, if your family members asked you to practice the art of killing when you were very young, would you feel disgusted? Yu Haoran's calm attitude caused a trace of admiration to flash through Hiryu's eyes. Therefore, her following tone was not as cold as when she was talking to her subordinates. It was very gentle. "Yes, but I will follow the request of my elders." Yu Haoran replied without much thought. "If your family asked you to kill at least one person a day since you were 10, would you be disgusted?" Yu Haoran's nonchalant answer caused Hiryu's beautiful brows to furrow. She then continued to ask, "Yes, but I will still comply with the request of the elders." Yu Haoran nodded and gave the same answer. "If your family asked you to kill your brothers and sisters with your own hands, or even kill your parents, would you be disgusted?" Hiryu's third question caused Yu Haoran to be completely stunned. Although the situation that Hiryu described had never happened in the Yu clan, Yu Haoran had met a brother in his previous life. Like Hiryu, he had also been trained by the elders of the clan. The purpose was to allow him to smoothly take over a team of assassins that the clan had secretly trained. At that time, he had also asked himself the same question. Yu Haoran had also thought about it, and his answer was the same as Hiryu's question. However, in the process of training, he needed to kill his brothers and sisters with his own hands. Yu Haoran could not consider it at all. He knew that he could not do it. "Senior He, although I, Yu Haoran, am cold-blooded, I am not heartless. Not only will I be disgusted with this practice, but I will also definitely not be able to do it." Yu Haoran replied truthfully. "Very good." Yu Haoran answered according to his heart, which made Hiryu satisfied and gratified. "Then, now you know why I slaughtered them and exterminated the entire He clan, right? And before you massacred the He clan's clansmen, grandfather, father, uncle, and first and second aunts were all alive and well. When did the elders of the clan let you kill your brothers and sisters? And when did they let you kill your parents?" When Hiryu asked the first two questions, Yu and He Ting sympathized with their aunt. They knew that in order to cultivate Hiryu into the leader of the Mount Xiang bandits, the family had given her a particularly cruel training since she was young. But when she heard her ask Yu Haoran the third question, the impatient He Ting could not help but refute. Coldly glancing at He Ting, Hiryu sneered and then cast her gaze at Yu Haoran. "Senior, do you really want me to explain?" With a wry smile, Yu Haoran asked reluctantly, "What do you think?" Hiryu also sneered and asked. Junior sisters, when Senior mentioned killing her brothers and sisters and killing her parents, she was referring to the brothers and sisters who were related to her by blood, her parents who were related to her by blood. Shaking his head with a bitter smile, Yu Haoran explained to the He sisters, "My sister and I are both direct descendants of the clan, and we are also related to my aunt by blood. Her brothers and sisters are my father, uncle, and aunt. Her father, who is related to her by blood, is my grandfather and grandmother. Not understanding the meaning of Yu Haoran's explanation, He Ting asked puzzledly. What I mean is very simple. Senior is not your biological aunt, which means she is not your father's biological sister, much less your grandfather's biological daughter. Seeing that He Ting was still unable to figure out the complicated relationship between the two, Yu Haoran had no choice but to make it clear. You Shi Xiao, you mean? Pointing at Yu, He Ting was speechless with a pale face. He also took 3 steps back with a pale face, his face full of pain. Yu Haoran, if you encountered such a situation, what would you do? Ignoring the He sisters who had suffered a blow, Ryu looked closely at Yu Haoran and asked with a slightly nervous tone. My choice will be the same as seniors, and in some aspects, even more excessive than seniors. He did not lie against his wishes just because he had promised the He sisters that he would avenge them. Instead, he answered directly, Yu Haoran, I find that I appreciate you more and more. Hearing Yu Haoran's answer, Ryu's eyes lit up, and her tone was full of admiration. Senior is too polite. After exchanging pleasantries, Yu Haoran stood up and began to activate the blood essence of the large Power King Kong ape in his body. Although I deeply sympathize with Senior's experience, I once promised the 2 junior sisters that I would avenge their family's extermination. At this point, Yu Haoran cupped his fists and said apologetically, Senior, I'm sorry. After that, he took out the purple rod and began to transform into a large Power King Kong ape. Ryu, who was sitting upright on the green rock, looked at Yu Haoran, whose body was getting bigger and bigger, and whose appearance was getting closer and closer to that of a large Power King Kong ape. His face did not reveal the slightest bit of panic, and only calmly looked at the gradually transforming Yu Haoran. And Ryu's overly calm performance made Yu Haoran feel a little uneasy, and he could not help but remind Thaling. Thaling, help me pay attention to the surroundings and see if there are any hidden experts around. No, just as Yu Haoran finished warning him, Thaling immediately replied. Chapter 413. Let me remind you, Ryu's identity is very special, and between her and the main character, Yu Haoran, if you want to know, continue to pay attention to this book. As the injuries to his soul continue to heal, the power of his consciousness that Thaling could use became stronger and stronger. Currently, the limit of the power of his consciousness that he could use had already reached the first stage of the Martial Saint realm. And with Thaling's first stage Martial Saint realm consciousness, he did not discover any hidden experts in the mountain range, which meant that Ryu did not have any helpers. Then, what confidence did she have to be able to face the large Power King Kong ape that was at the peak of the 7th stage of the Martial King realm after his transformation? Even after Yu Haoran had completely transformed, this question had been bothering him. Originally, the He sisters were still feeling sympathy for Ryu's tragic fate, but when they saw Yu Haoran, who had stirred up their hearts, instantly turned into a 57-meter tall giant ape, they were so scared that they retreated more than 10 steps. Their faces were so pale that they were devoid of blood. This was because in their subconscious, humans were humans, and strange beasts were strange beasts. They had never heard of anyone being able to transform into a strange beast. Only now did they finally understand why the new sect master of the 100 Qi Gate, Chu Zhongyu and Gongsun Yiming, when they mentioned Yu Haoran, their tone and expressions were filled with respect from the bottom of their hearts. That's right. This secret technique of using a strange beast transformation is definitely a powerful trump card that can turn the tables in most cases. After Yu Haoran had completely transformed, Ryu, who had been sitting on the green rock, slowly stood up. She raised her head and looked at the 57-meter tall large Power King Kong ape, and couldn't help but praise it. Senior, the most important thing in a martial artist's life is to keep his promises. So I'm sorry. Ryu's overly calm actions caused the doubts in Yu Haoran's heart to grow heavier and heavier. However, he knew that it would be difficult to find out the real reason why she was so calm just by guessing. It would be better to verify it through fighting. Hiryu extended her lily-white hand towards Yu Haoran, indicating that he should not make a move for the time being. Senior, what is the meaning of this? Yu Haoran asked, puzzled, as he put down the purple stick he had just lifted. Yu Haoran, have you been wondering all this time? I, Hiryu, am only a weak woman in the martial king realm. How could I be so calm when facing you after your transformation? After being guessed by Hiryu, Yu Haoran neither refuted nor nodded in agreement. He just kept looking at her. The Echo Mountain Bandits have a total of 7 great envoys: black, white, green, blue, cyan, purple, and red. The 4 protectors are wind, water, thunder, and lightning. These 12 people are all peak 7th grade martial kings and above. And I, Hiryu, am a weak woman. How did I manage to suppress these powerful, arrogant, and disrespectful bandit experts? Although Yu Haoran didn't say anything, Hiryu knew that he wanted to know the reason, so she explained very understandingly. That's because I'm the same as you, Yu Haoran. I also have a secret transformation technique that allows me to transform into an exotic beast. Speaking until here, a powerful aura suddenly burst out from Hiryu's body. Along with the activation of the powerful aura, a scorching aura rushed over like a heat wave. Along with the scorching aura, Hiryu, who was originally standing in front of the cyan rock, suddenly disappeared. In her place was a bird-type exotic beast that was over 20 meters long. Its appearance was colorful, and its entire body was emitting dense flames. Fire Phoenix. As Hiryu transformed into a bird-type exotic beast, the He sisters, who were forced to continue retreating by the heat wave, couldn't help but exclaim. As for the green, black, and blue envoys, as well as the bandits of the Echo Mountain Bandits, they all had expressions of worship in their eyes. It's not a fire phoenix. It's just a non-woven bird that possesses the bloodline of the ancient divine beast, the fire phoenix. After hearing the He sisters' exclamation, Yu Haoran shook his head and directly pointed out the true origin of the bird-type exotic beast that was emitting dense flames in front of him. Senior, if you've been paying attention to this junior's performance in the sect, then you should know that this junior has grasped an extremely terrifying staff technique. I wonder how you'll block it. Just as Hiryu transformed into the non-woven bird, Yu Haoran's original plan to kill Hiryu and fulfill his promise to the He sisters began to waver. Although he didn't know where Hiryu obtained the secret transformation technique, Yu Haoran knew very well that obtaining the secret transformation technique didn't mean that one would definitely be able to use the secret transformation technique. That was because if one wanted to use the secret transformation technique, especially one that surpassed one's cultivation by a lot, not only did it have a very high requirement on one's physique, it also tested one's willpower to an abnormal degree. Other than that, one also had to endure the backlash from the secret transformation technique after the secret transformation technique ended. In his previous life, Yu Haoran had passed the secret transformation technique to a few people. However, those people were either unable to use the transformation technique or died from the backlash of the secret transformation technique. This was also the main reason why he had been unwilling to teach the secret transformation technique to his senior brothers, even though he clearly had the means to quickly increase the strength of the Clear Cloud sect. Now, he had met someone who could perfectly use the secret transformation technique like him. Moreover, they didn't have any enmity with each other. The thought of sympathizing with each other made him decide to try his best to resolve the grudge between Hiryu and the He sisters without harming her. Yu Haoran, actually, when I learned that in the 100 Chi Gate, there was a young man who could perfectly use the secret transformation technique and relied on the secret transformation technique to kill his way to the Enforcer Peak alone, forcing the Enforcer Peak Lord, Gao Wanping, to admit defeat, you attracted my attention. Hiryu, who had transformed into the non-woven bird, flapped her wings and directly flew to the same height as Yu Haoran's line of sight as she replied in a crisp voice. After that, I bribed one of the deacons in the 100 Chi Gate. I didn't need him to do anything to betray the sect. I only needed him to record your daily schedule. Hiryu, you've gone too far. Originally, because of sympathizing with each other, Yu Haoran already had the idea of being merciful. However, When he heard that Ryu had arranged for a spy to monitor his every move in the sect, a flame of anger suddenly rose in Yu Haoran's heart. In the face of the angry Yu Haoran, Ryu turned a blind eye to him and continued. Just the night before yesterday, that is, after I wiped out the He clan, I accidentally met an old friend. This old friend not only revealed a lot of secrets about you, but also described in detail the true power of the stick technique that you have mastered through personal experience. Ryu, because of your tragic fate and the ability to perfectly use the secret transformation technique like me, I had already been moved by compassion. I only planned to wipe out the entire Mount Echo bandits and then spare your life. Now it seems that I have no choice but to ruthlessly destroy you. Not only had Ryu arranged for a spy to monitor him, he had also colluded with his enemy, Zhao Ji. Ryu's various actions had completely aroused Yu Haoran's killing intent. Yu Haoran, since I already know that you possess a terrifying staff technique, I still dare to face you head-on. Do you think that I don't have the means to deal with that staff technique? Facing Yu Haoran's threat, Ryu arrogantly retorted. One strike toward the sky. With a stomp of his feet, Yu Haoran, who had transformed into a large Power King Kong ape, soared into the sky. Then, with the help of the downward momentum, he directly used the most powerful technique, one strike towards the sky. Phoenix Dance of the Nine Heavens. Chapter 414. Along with the use of the Phoenix Dance of the Ninth Heaven martial skill, the scorching flames emitted from the non-woven bird's body quickly left the non-woven bird's body and instantly condensed into a fire phoenix in the air that was hundreds of meters long. Chirp! The fire phoenix let out a cry towards the sky, then spread out a pair of wings that were hundreds of meters long and quickly rushed towards the giant staff that was swinging towards it. Boom! As the giant staff and the 100-meter-long giant phoenix fiercely collided, the entire mountain range immediately resounded with a deafening roar. The powerful roar forcefully knocked out the He sisters, as well as the bandits who were mining the dark gold stone in the gold mine. Along with the deafening roar, the energy fluctuations formed by the collision of the two powerful forces quickly spread out from the air, shattering the mountain peak that contained the dark gold stone and the gold into countless pieces. As for the bandits who were unconscious in the gold mine, they did not escape the fate of being shattered into pieces. Black Bear, leave the peak immediately, and then leave with the He sisters. Actually, when the sky-facing staff and the Phoenix Dance of the Ninth Heaven had just clashed, Yu Haoran had already felt the terrifying power formed by the Phoenix Dance of the Ninth Heaven martial skill. It was also close to the martial saint realm, and did not lose out to the sky-facing staff technique in the slightest. Black Bear, who had also felt the terrifying power contained in the staff technique and the fire phoenix, quickly appeared beside the He sisters after hearing Yu Haoran's reminder. While holding them in his hands, he sped up and left, while returning to his original size and increasing his defensive power. The aftermath of the collision between the sky-facing staff and the Phoenix Dance of the Ninth Heaven quickly swept through the third mountain peak and then spread out in all directions. Whether it was the tall trees or the hard rocks, under the influence of this powerful force, they all turned into dust. In the end, the aftermath of the collision between the sky-facing staff and the Phoenix Dance of the Ninth Heaven martial skill affected an area of 100 kilometers, and its power began to weaken until it finally disappeared. Yu Haoran, who had landed back on the ground, immediately felt an extreme sense of exhaustion. And this feeling of exhaustion began to affect the transformation secret technique, causing him to gradually lose control of his transformed body. While taking out a large amount of pills to recover his physical strength and essence energy from his storage ring and swallowing them, Yu Haoran took the risk to activate the second drop of large Power King Kong Ape's blood essence and continued to maintain his transformed form. As for Ryu, who had transformed into the non-woven bird, after using the Phoenix Dance of the Nine Heavens martial skill, as well as enduring the aftermath of the collision of the two forces, she was unable to move. Due to overexerting her strength, she instantly fainted and fell heavily to the ground, ending her exotic beast transformation. However, although the mask worn by Hiryu was also a low-grade king stage celestial device, it eventually broke and fell off under the impact of the aftermath of the collision of martial arts techniques with a power close to that of a martial venerable, revealing the indescribable beauty under the mask. If Lin Mengyao was described as a fairy who had fallen to the mortal world, then Hiryu was a goddess from the nine heavens. If the reborn Jiang Jingru was like a fairy in the wind, then Hiryu was like a fairy dancing among 100 flowers. If Zhang Ro, who cultivated the art of seduction, was like a woman who seduced souls, then Hiryu was a witch who made all the men in the world go crazy for her. No wonder Hiryu had to use a jade set to hide her appearance. Her current unconscious state was enough to make any man who saw her appearance want her at all costs. His mind connected to the storage ring, and he took out a black cloak from it, directly covering Hiryu. Then, Yu Haoran finished his secret transformation while refining the elixir he had just swallowed. Don't touch your first master. Just as Yu Haoran finished his transformation, the three middle-aged men in blue, black, and blue, who had fled the mountain in advance, quickly returned to their original place. After seeing Hiryu, who was covered by the black cloak, the middle-aged man in blue was about to step forward and lift the black cloak to take a look. Yu Haoran immediately stopped him. "You have no right to stop me," the middle-aged man in blue said coldly in response to Yu Haoran's attempt to stop him. "I'm not stopping you. I'm ordering you." Yu Haoran's face darkened, and he rebuked in an unfriendly tone. "Yu Haoran, I once heard the first master talk about the secret transformation technique. Every time you use the secret transformation technique, your body will suffer from the backlash of the technique, and you won't be able to mobilize your soul in Yuan Li for a short period of time." The middle-aged man in blue said proudly in response to Yu Haoran's rebuke. "Now that you've suffered from the backlash of the secret transformation technique, what ability do you have to order us around? That's right. What you should do now is not to stop Blue Emissary from caring for the First Master, but to think about how to protect your own life." The middle-aged man in black, who had the strongest murderous aura, walked directly to the middle-aged man in blue and threatened him. "I don't know why the shrewd Black Widow has such a group of stupid subordinates." Yu Haoran sneered in disdain at the middle-aged man in black's threat. "You're courting death." After hearing Yu Haoran's sarcasm, the black-clothed man's expression changed. He then mobilized his soul and Yuan Li, intending to kill Yu Haoran directly. At this moment, a rumbling sound of footsteps could be heard. Following that, a 58-meter-tall black bear quickly ran over. "The one in black, I really want to die. Why don't you fulfill my wish now?" Originally, he wanted to reactivate the large Power King Kong ape's blood essence in his body, and then smash the black-clothed man who dared to threaten him into a meat patty. But with the arrival of the black bear, there was no need for him to do it himself. However, after seeing the black-clothed man's face turn pale in an instant and subconsciously retreat, Yu Haoran couldn't help but tease him. "You!" Seeing the black bear that quickly appeared behind Yu Haoran and stared at him with a pair of watermelon-sized eyes, the black-clothed man was so scared that he took a few steps back. He didn't dare to say any threatening words. "Yu Haoran, for my sake, can you forgive the black envoy's offense just now?" Although the black-clothed man took the initiative to admit defeat, Yu Haoran did not plan to let him go. He raised his hand and wanted to let the black bear directly smash the black-clothed man into a meat patty, but Hirushin's weak voice suddenly sounded in his ears. "Hiryu, you can't even protect yourself right now, and you still have the time to care about the safety of your subordinates." Looking at Hiryu, who reached out to take off the black cloak and put on a new mask, Yu Haoran coldly threatened. "Yu Haoran, I believe you will definitely not kill me." Facing Yu Haoran's threat, Hiryu said confidently. "Oh." Seeing the confident Hiryu, Yu Haoran asked with interest. "I want to hear it now. Let's hear how confident you, Hiryu, are that I, Yu Haoran, won't dare to kill you, based on the fact that you just saw my face." After taking an elixir, with the help of the elixir, Hiryu stood up and then said in a provocative tone with a pair of towering peaks in front of her chest. To be honest, you are indeed the most outstanding woman you, Howren, have ever seen in terms of appearance, figure, temperament, and talent. Nodding, Yu Howren confirmed that Ryu's outstanding appearance was indeed very tempting. But then, his tone changed, and there was a trace of coldness in his voice. But Yu Howren is not a man who only knows how to lust after beauty. You want me to let you go just because of your beauty. Chapter 415. There's so many things to do in the company. It seems that the 4th and 5th updates will have to be postponed to after 9 o'clock. Yu Howren's sarcastic and mocking retort made Ryu very angry. She pointed her finger at Yu Howren and was so angry that she couldn't say a word. At the same time, because of anger, her breathing became heavier, making her chest rise up and down. The visual shock wave made the 3 middle-aged men in blue, black, and blue look straight at her. Taking a deep breath and suppressing the anger in her heart, Ryu, who had calmed down, suddenly began to talk about her life experience. Yu Howren, Ryu, was not born this beautiful. Before the age of 16, I was only slightly more beautiful than them. I could barely be considered a beauty. Pointing at Yu and Ting, who were lying on the shoulder of the black bear, Ryu said modestly, "All the way until the day I came of age at the age of 16, I accidentally learned from Shuping, who is the strongest person in the He family, the father of the current clan leader, Yu, and Ting's grandfather, that the people I had killed with my own hand were actually my brothers and sisters, my parents. Yu Howren, if you suddenly knew this news, I'm afraid that you wouldn't be able to bear the cruel reality." Speaking of this, Ryu's eyes were filled with a trace of crystal-clear mist. Indeed, nodding his head, Yu Howren agreed. At the same time, he couldn't help but guess what she wanted to do. The sudden blow made me disheartened. The first thing I thought of was death. So, taking advantage of the talent test, I showed amazing talent and potential, which made the He family's experts relax their vigilance against me. I escaped from the Emerald Mountain Villa and then came to a cliff. I planned to end my evil life by jumping off the cliff. Speaking of this, Ryu couldn't help but smile bitterly. I don't know if Ryu's nightmare, or if God didn't want me to die. In the process of jumping off the cliff, I accidentally got caught by a pine tree that stretched out from the cliff. So what if it stuck? At worst, I'll break the pine branch and continue to commit suicide by jumping off the cliff. But what I didn't expect was that there was actually an azure silk python on the pine branch. Regardless of whether he commits suicide by jumping off the cliff or being eaten by the azure thread python, he will still die in the end. Thus, I did not resist and allowed the azure threaded python to devour me. Speaking up to here, Ryu stretched out her jade-like finger and flicked the hair in front of her forehead. She glanced at the 3 middle-aged men in green, blue, and black from the corner of her eyes. After a trace of cold light flashed in her eyes, she continued. However, what I didn't expect was that there was actually a medicinal pill and a storage ring within the azure thread python's body. The azure threaded python's valiant squeezing force actually forced that pill into my mouth. When the medicinal effects of the pill began to take effect, I discovered that my physique was becoming stronger and stronger. Not only could I withstand the pressure of the azure thread python, my entire body was filled with strength. In the end, I managed to slice open the azure thread python's stomach and survive. After leaving the azure thread python's body, I discovered that the pill had not only changed my physique, it had also changed my appearance. In order to prevent those treacherous villains from the Sioux clan from spying on my beauty, I told outsiders that my appearance had been destroyed by the azure thread python. Since then, I have always been wearing a mask. Speaking up to here, Ryu raised her head and looked straight at Yu Howren. Her voice suddenly became gentle as she spoke. Yu Howren, from the moment I put on the mask, I made a vow using the rules of the heavenly Tao. In the future, the first man to see my true appearance, no matter if he is old or young, rich or poor, an idiot or a genius, I will be willing to marry him. I will sincerely and truly take care of him and accompany him to grow old together. What? Hearing Hiruyu's last words, Yu Haoran was immediately shocked. He hurriedly shook his head and waved his hand. Senior, this junior's only pursuit in this life is to be able to step onto the peak of the martial Tao and try to see if I can break through the limits of life and death. As for the feelings between men and women, I don't want to, nor do I dare, nor do I have extravagant hopes. Seeing that Yu Haoran didn't even consider and directly shook his head to refuse, Hiruyu's originally gentle tone immediately returned to the fiery personality of a black widow. Yu Haoran, I don't care what your heart is, and I don't care what your life's pursuit is. From the moment you saw my appearance, I, Hiruyu, am your woman. You, Yu Haoran, are my man. Senior, no matter if it's an ugly appearance or a peerless appearance, the heavens gave us different appearances for people to see. You can't take me as your wife just because this junior accidentally saw your true appearance. Yu Haoran persuaded with a bitter smile. That's right. Just because you accidentally saw my appearance, you must take me as your wife. Hiryu stubbornly refused to listen to any of Yu Haoran's persuasion. Seeing Hiruyu's unyielding attitude, Yu Haoran didn't know whether to turn around and run away, nor did he know whether to directly attack her or teach her a lesson. In the end, he could only use the most ruthless method to deal with women, using the age gap to make her take him seriously. Senior, this junior is only 17 years old this year. I'm still an ignorant youth. Senior, what about you? He couldn't go too deep with his words. Otherwise, it wouldn't be letting the other party know the difficulties and retreat. It would be clearly humiliating the other party. So you're worried about the problem of age. After hearing Yu Haoran's worries, Hiryu let out a long sigh of relief and then said with a smile, Yu Haoran, don't look at how the He clan's 2 girls call me aunt. In fact, I'm only 20 years old this year. I'm only 3 years older than you. As the saying goes, a woman 3 years older than you will hug a golden brick. If you marry me, you'll only be able to enjoy life for the rest of your life. Senior, what do you need this junior to do for you to let me go? Whether it was facing an expert at the peak of the 9th level martial saint in his previous life, or in a dangerous place where he had a slim chance of survival, Yu Haoran had never been as difficult to deal with as he was today. In the end, he could only beg with a bitter face. If you don't want to marry me, there's only one way. Yu Haoran had rejected her again and again, which made Hiryu feel very angry. If she was an ugly woman, a trash without talent and potential, an ordinary woman without any foundation, she could understand and accept Yu Haoran's rejection. But she wasn't. Not only did she have a peerless appearance that most men in the world couldn't refuse, and that all women were envious of, she also had a top talent that was not inferior to the monstrous level of the top sex and the wealth that the Echo Mountain bandits had accumulated for hundreds of years. It could be said that the conditions she had were the object that all men in the world dreamed of pursuing. Why weren't these enough to move Yu Haoran? The moment I put on a mask that year, I made an oath with the rules of the heavenly Tao. If the first man who sees my face refuses to marry me, either I die, he dies, or we both die. So, if you don't want to marry me, you can either kill yourself in front of me now, or kill me with a slap. At this point, Hiryu directly closed her eyes, as if she was letting Yu Haoran do whatever he wanted. Although Hiryu's actions seemed absurd, from her experience just now, it wasn't impossible for her to make an oath with the rules of the heavenly Tao. If Hiryu hadn't forced him to take her as his wife, Yu Haoran might have been able to ruthlessly kill her. Chapter 416. In the face of Hiryu's death, Yu Haoran planned to escape. Yu Haoran, if you dare to leave now, I will immediately die in front of you. Although she did not open her eyes, Hiryu seemed to be able to guess Yu Haoran's thoughts, and her tone was full of cold threats. The left foot that had just been lifted could only be obediently put down. Yu Haoran said with a wry smile, Senior, other than marrying you, is there no other way? No. At the same time, Hiryu decisively responded, and then reached out to take off the mask on her face. As Hiryu took off her mask again, The three middle-aged men standing beside her couldn't help but suck in a breath of cold air at the same time. Their originally worshipful eyes were replaced by naked lust. "You, Howren, am I beautiful?" Because when she took off the mask, a few strands of golden hair scattered, Hiruyu's gentle voice had a trace of temptation. "Beautiful." Yu Howren honestly nodded his head and replied, "Is my figure good?" Hiruyu continued to ask gently. "Good." Yu Howren still honestly nodded his head and admitted, "Is my temperament outstanding?" "Outstanding." "Is my talent and potential outstanding enough?" "More outstanding than me." "Will you take me as your wife?" Seeing that Yu Howren had unknowingly fallen into her trap, Hiruyu's heart was happy and continued to increase the temptation. Yu Howren just nodded his head and agreed. His strong mental state cultivation made him instantly wake up, and then he asked with a gloomy face, "Hiruyu, you actually use charm to seduce me. Yu Howren, if you were willing to marry me, would I use such a despicable method to seduce you?" Yu Howren, who fell into the trap, was angry, and Hiruyu, who failed to seduce him, was even more angry out of shame. You, being accused by Hiruyu even more angrily, the anger in Yu Howren's heart disappeared in an instant, leaving only endless depression and helplessness. Then Yu Howren closed his eyes and began to carefully think about how to persuade Hiruyu to give up the idea of marriage. "Senior, I am still young now, and my cultivation has just started. If I think too much about love, not only will it delay my own cultivation, but it will also waste the talent and opportunity given to me by God." After more than 10 minutes of consideration, and combined with Hiruyu's strong character, Yu Howren decided to temporarily postpone the marriage between the two until she was completely disappointed. Then she would give up the idea of marriage. "If Senior is willing, you and I can give each other some time to get to know each other and see if we are really suitable to be husband and wife." After listening to Howren's explanation, Hiryu also closed her eyes and thought for a while. After opening her eyes again, she nodded in agreement. This was because Hiryu knew that Yu Howren had already made enough concessions by not continuing to forcefully oppose her. After all, just because he saw her appearance, he wanted to marry her. This kind of thing was really too absurd and unacceptable. If she continued to force Yu Howren to marry her, she was afraid that she would really force Yu Howren into a corner. He would not care about her life and death and directly turn around to leave. At that time, she would really have no way to clean up the mess. However, looking at Hiyu and He Ting lying on He Xiong's shoulder, who had already woken up but were still pretending to be unconscious, and thinking of Lin Mengyao and Kang Yong-ah, who had a good relationship with Yu Howren in the 100 Chi Gate, Hiryu couldn't help but start to worry again. Because a boy like Yu Howren, who looked ordinary but was actually restrained and elegant, was the easiest to attract the love of beautiful women. Although Hiryu also knew that she couldn't have Yu Howren alone, the title of the First Lady must be hers. "Yu Howren, I agreed to the request you just made, but you need to give me an accurate time period. The longer they got to know each other, the better." Seeing that Hiryu finally agreed to postpone the marriage, Yu Howren couldn't help but breathe a sigh of relief. At the same time, he opened his mouth to give a 10-year deadline. But just as he said 10, before he could say anything, Yu Howren immediately saw that Hiruyu's face was faintly showing signs of anger. His 10 mouth immediately changed to 5, but Hiruyu's face was still gloomy. In desperation, he could only give his bottom line time. 3 years. Okay, 3 years it is. Seeing that Yu Howren finally changed his mouth and shortened the time period to 3 years, Hiruyu's gloomy face instantly smiled. Although 3 years was a little short, it could temporarily get rid of Hiruyu's forced marriage. Yu Howren felt that it was worth it. As for whether or not he would marry Hiryu 3 years later, that was the only way Yu Howren could think of at the moment. Unfortunately, as if she guessed Yu Howren's thoughts, Hiryu smiled and said, "Yu Howren, just now you said that we need to use 3 years to get to know each other. Then how can we get to know each other better? Only through more contact and shared experiences. So according to my idea, in the next 3 years, we have to stay together at all times." Yu Howren's face changed slightly as he stared at Hiryu. In the end, He could only bitterly smile and shake his head. As expected of the Black Widow, who was known for her intelligence, she saw through his intentions so quickly. The plan that he worked so hard to come up with finally came back to harm him. Although he was very unwilling, Yu Haoran knew that he dug the hole and could only fill it himself. Therefore, he didn't reject He Ruyu's suggestion and just nodded rather gloomily. Subsequently, Yu Haoran's gaze turned back to the shattered mountain peak, and a trace of worry flashed across his face. "Haoran, don't worry." Seeing Yu Haoran's gaze turn to the mountain peak, He Ruyu, who knew what he was worried about, immediately comforted him while instructing the middle-aged man in black. "Black Envoy, return to the Echo Mountain bandits immediately and gather all the men here. Help me and Haoran find all the dark gold stones and the shattered rocks in the shortest time possible." However, in the face of He Ruyu's instructions, the middle-aged man in black did not respectfully obey like before. Instead, he looked at He Ruyu with a special gaze. "Black Envoy, are you thinking of rebelling?" Seeing that the middle-aged man in black didn't listen to her instructions, He Ruyu's face darkened and she reprimanded him in a sharp tone. "According to the rules of our Echo Mountain bandits for hundreds of years, if the leader marries someone else, then the position of the leader will be immediately revoked. Then, the 4 great guardians and us 7 great envoys will elect a new leader." In the face of He Ruyu's sharp reprimand, the middle-aged man in black did not panic at all and replied in a calm tone. "Black Envoy, according to the rules of the Echo Mountain bandits that have been passed down for hundreds of years, before you recommend a new leader, I still have the power of the leader, right?" In the face of the middle-aged man in black's counterattack, He Ruyu, who had a card up her sleeve, immediately retaliated. "That's right." Nodding, the middle-aged man in black suddenly revealed a strange smile on his face and said, "But I just don't listen to your orders. What can you do to me?" "Black Envoy, it seems that after so many years of ups and downs, you have forgotten the means of the Black Widow." Chapter 417. How can I forget our master's methods? Faced with He Ruyu's threat, the black emissary remained fearless. There was even a hint of complacency in his tone. "If our master, Yu Haoran, and that 5th-rank black bear can't use their powers, then I wonder if our master can still use his methods." No. With the help of the pellets, He Ruyu had managed to recover 50% of her soul and 40% of her astral energy. But when she tried to mobilize them, she realized that she couldn't. "How dare you poison me?" He Ryu didn't need to think too much to know that she had fallen into the black emissary's trap. "Emissary Green, Emissary Blue, take down the black emissary." The middle-aged man in black had already mentioned that he had poisoned her, Yu Haoran, and the black bear. Therefore, He Ryu could only hope that Emissary Green and Emissary Blue weren't poisoned. Unfortunately, when He Ryu asked for help, the 2 middle-aged men in blue and green who weren't poisoned stood on either side of the middle-aged man in black. Their attitude was clear. "Emissary Green, Emissary Blue, how could you do this?" He Ryu found it hard to accept the fact that her trusted subordinates, whom she had carefully trained, had betrayed her without her knowing it. "Ryu, could it be that you still haven't realized that the reason why they betrayed you, other than the fact that you're about to lose your position as the head, is probably also related to your exposed appearance?" Yu Haoran walked to He Ruyu's side and extended his hand to lightly pat her shoulder as he explained. He Ryu looked up at Yu Haoran and asked sadly, "Haoran, Hong Yen, is she really the cause of all this?" "Ryu, is Hong Yen really the cause of all this trouble?" Yu Haoran asked rhetorically. Then, he ignored He Ryu. Instead, he looked up at the 3 middle-aged men in blue, green, and black and mocked them with disdain. "Do you really think you can poison me, Yu Haoran, and my pet? Do you really think you can poison me, Yu Haoran, and my pet? Yu Haoran, what do you mean?" Hearing Yu Haoran's disdain and contempt for the soul-dispersing pill, the black envoy's expression changed. "Black Bear, smash them into meat patties." Yu Haoran was too lazy to talk nonsense with the 3 middle-aged men in green, blue, and black who coveted He Ruyu's beauty. He directly ordered He Xiong behind him. And just as Yu Haoran's voice fell, Black Bear, who had long guessed that he would have to do it himself and was prepared in advance, slamming his two giant palms down heavily before the three of them could react. As the black bear retracted its paws, in addition to two deep pits about 2 meters deep on the ground, there were also 3 piles of bloody, minced meat. Yu Haoran, why aren't you and He Xiong poisoned? He Ryu asked in confusion as she watched He Xiong easily kill her favorite subordinate. There are many poisons in the world that can poison me, Yu Haoran, but this soul-dispersing pill is not one of them. Yu Haoran said proudly as he took out an antidote and handed it to He Ryu, telling her to take it. Then, Yu Haoran's gaze turned to the shattered mountain peak again. It would take him, He Ryu, and He Xiong at least 1 to 2 days to sort out the broken rocks and find the dark gold stones among them. Of course, Yu Haoran was not willing to waste his precious time here, but he didn't want to give up on the precious dark gold stones either. He had to ask the Thaling in his mind for help. Thaling, do you have a way to find the dark gold stones among the broken rocks in the shortest time possible? Yu Haoran, if you want all of the dark gold stones, I can't do it in such a short time, the Tower Genie, who had long since prepared for Yu Haoran's request, replied. But if you only need a small portion of the dark gold stones, I can use my divine telekinesis to help you extract them in 3 minutes at most. That's great. Yu Haoran wanted the dark gold stones mainly because he wanted to use the dark gold stones to replace some of the auxiliary spiritual herbs that were hard to find or had disappeared long ago. As a substitute for auxiliary spiritual herbs, the amount of dark gold stones used each time was very small. Therefore, he didn't really need to use a lot of dark gold stones. When Thaling was about to use his divine telekinesis to avoid He Ryu and take the dark gold stones, Yu Haoran suddenly said, "Oh, right, Thaling, I need to trouble you with something. Are you thinking of refining a mask for your woman that can withstand a stronger impact?" Without needing Yu Haoran to explain the troublesome matter, Thaling had already guessed his intentions and teased him with a smile. Thaling, the 3-year agreement is just a way to delay things. I won't marry He Ryu as my wife. Yu Haoran quickly explained when he saw that Thaling had misunderstood his thoughts. In response, the tower spirit only smiled and did not say anything. As the saying goes, the onlooker sees the game more clearly than the player involved. Through the process of He Ryu using various means to force the marriage, Thaling knew that this woman called He Ryu was not only very intelligent, but also very skillful. Thaling believed that Yu Haoran, who was an idiot when it came to relationships, would be subdued by this woman sooner or later. Thaling didn't object to this. Instead, he approved of it very much, because not only did He Ryu's talent and potential not lose to Yu Haoran, but she also had many years of experience as the leader of the Echo Mountain Bandit Group, which gave her the potential to be an excellent leader. In the future, she could help Yu Haoran to better manage the force that he would establish sooner or later. Give me 3 days. I will help her refine a special mask that can withstand the impact of a peak 9th grade martial saint. Thaling, thank you. A mask that could withstand the impact of a peak 9th grade martial saint, with the level of power that He Ryu could come into contact with at the current stage, would basically prevent unnecessary disputes caused by her peerless appearance after the mask was accidentally broken. Using the power of divine sense to collect the dark golden stone among the broken stones, he needed to avoid He Ryu's attention. Therefore, Yu Haoran began to think of ways to divert her attention. Junior sisters, since you're both awake, why don't you come down and talk? To be able to attract He Ryu's attention and prevent her from easily detecting the fluctuation of divine sense, it could only be something that she was most interested in. Therefore, Yu Haoran said to He Yu and He Ting, who were still pretending to be unconscious. Yu Shixiang, being directly exposed by Yu Haoran, He Yu and He Ting were obviously very embarrassed. Junior sister He Yu, junior sister He Jia, I'm really sorry. After the He sisters were sent in front of Yu Haoran by the black bear, he cupped his fists and bowed, sincerely expressing his apology. Seeing Yu Haoran take the initiative to apologize, He Ryu instantly felt a warm current flowing into her heart. Looking at Yu Haoran, her eyes were filled with infinite tenderness. Yu Shi Xiang, you don't have to apologize to us. Dodging Yu Haoran's sincere apology, He Ting hurriedly said, Sigh. Actually, in the end, the reason why He Ryu annihilated the He family was completely because our family had gone too far. It's reasonable for her to take revenge. He Ting's unique way of thinking caused Yu Haoran to look at her in astonishment, because this unique way of thinking meant that she was very likely to give up on the hatred between her and He Ryu. Unfortunately, Yu Haoran's imagination was too perfect. He Ting's following words made him feel that he had underestimated the shrewdness of women. Chapter 418. He Ting looked directly at He Ryu and threatened with a voice full of killing intent. He Ryu, as the saying goes, a life for a life, and a debt must be repaid with money. Since our He clan was destroyed by you, then my sister and I should be the ones to take revenge. Next, my sister and I will choose a prestigious sect and cultivate diligently. We will use our own hands to behead you, He Ryu, as a sacrifice for the blood debt of the 1,600 direct descendants of our clan. He Ting's threat of revenge was powerful and resonant, but she knew very well that the probability of this threat being realized was very, very low. This was because He Ryu could be said to be the most outstanding monstrous genius in terms of talent, potential, comprehension, perseverance, temperament, and methods in the history of the He clan. With her and her sister He Ting's potential, they would not be able to catch up to He Ryu in terms of cultivation and strength. Instead, they would be left further and further behind. In other words, revenge might be an unreachable dream for the two sisters. I'll be waiting for you. According to He Ryu's personality, she would definitely not leave behind any hidden dangers for herself. However, He Ting had just used the threat of her and her sister's independent revenge to help Yu Haoran erase the promise he had made, so that he would not have to bear the test of his heart. He would not have to suffer the inner demons that might arise when he broke through. He Ryu was still very grateful to the sisters. Therefore, she only left behind a ruthless sentence and did not eliminate the source of the trouble. Yu Haoran, it's done. Just as He Ryu and the He sisters were temporarily delaying their revenge, Thaling's joyful voice suddenly sounded in Yu Haoran's mind. Thaling, thank you for your hard work. After thanking him, Yu Haoran began to consider whether to leave this place now. After all, he had already collected enough dark golden stones. Staying here would be a waste of time and would be of no use. Therefore, Yu Haoran suggested, Ryu, if you want to extract the dark golden stones from the gravel, it won't be done in a short time. Why don't you and I return to the sect first, and then I'll get eldest senior brother to send people to extract the dark golden stones. Looks like that's the only way. Looking at the shattered mountain peak, although He Ryu was unwilling, she had no choice but to temporarily leave this place. Let's go. Yu Haoran signaled the black bear to shrink its size. He jumped onto the black bear's back first, and He Ryu followed closely behind, leaning against Yu Haoran. At the same time, the position she was sitting in happened to block the He sisters who had jumped onto the bear's back and were planning to approach Yu Haoran. They looked at each other, especially when they saw the naked threat in He Ryu's eyes. The He sisters could only helplessly move there, but to avoid being misunderstood by He Ryu. As if he didn't notice He Ryu's little movements, Yu Haoran signaled the black bear to return to the 100 Chi Gate while using medicinal pills and spirit stones to recover the elemental energy he had consumed after transforming. The four of them were speechless the entire way. But just as the black bear came to a fork in the road, He Ryu, who also used medicinal pills to recover the elemental energy consumed by the transformation mystic technique, suddenly opened her eyes. Haoran, can you accompany me to the headquarters of the Echo Mountain Bandits? Looking at the two roads leading in different directions, He Ryu suddenly asked. Yu Haoran asked in puzzlement after patting the black bear to signal it to stop first. Ryu, didn't you already plan to completely break away from the Echo Mountain Bandits? Why do you still want to go back now? The questioning was not because Yu Haoran hated bandits, but because the interests and relationships involved behind the Echo Mountain Bandits were too complicated. He didn't want Ryu to fall into the intricate power struggle again. Howren, don't misunderstand. I want to return to Echo Mountain. I don't want to have anything to do with the bandits. I just have some personal matters to deal with. Hearing Howren's questioning, Ryu, who was afraid that he would misunderstand, quickly explained. Okay. Although Ryu didn't explain what the personal matters were, at the critical moment when they just began to understand each other, she actually chose to do so, indicating that the personal matters that needed to be dealt with were very important. Therefore, Howren nodded obediently and agreed. Xiaong, we want to part with you temporarily. Just when Howren planned to let the black bear go to Echo Mountain, He Ting suddenly proposed to leave. Junior's sister He Ting. This place is nearly 1,000 miles away from the 100 Gate. In the middle, you have to pass through the Heart Moon sect that is at odds with the 100 Gate. If you two leave alone, I'm afraid it will be very dangerous. When He Ting took the initiative to bear the burden of revenge, allowing him to break away from the promise that he couldn't fulfill and avoid the demons that might form his heart, Howren felt that he owed the He sisters. Therefore, he wanted to recommend the He sisters to the Sunset Peak so that they could have a place to live in peace in the future. Xiaong, my sister and I originally planned to join the Heart Moon sect. Shaking her head, He Ting said the idea that they had been thinking about for a long time. With a slight frown, Howren asked in a slightly displeased tone, "Are you sure you want to join the Heart Moon sect at the risk of meeting me on the battlefield in the future?" Xiaong, joining the Heart Moon sect doesn't mean that we sisters will be enemies with Senior Brother in the future. We just want to find a place to settle down for the time being. When my sister and I break through to the martial arts Grandmaster realm and can rely on our own strength to travel the world, we will choose to quietly leave the Heart Moon sect. Hearing Howren's unhappy tone, He answered on behalf of his sister. All right, take care of your safety. Although He and He Ting didn't say it clearly, Howren could guess why they rejected the 100 Gate and wanted to join the Heart Moon sect. It was probably related to the reason why he had to stay with Ryu for the next 3 years. In this regard, Howren knew that he couldn't continue to persuade them. Personally leading the He sisters down from the bear's back, Howren took out a portion of elixirs and a portion of level 10 to level 7 spirit stones from his storage ring and handed them to the sisters. If you want to quickly increase your cultivation and strength, although aptitude and hard work are important, the assistance of cultivation resources is even more indispensable. I hope these elixirs and spirit stones can be of help to you. Xiaong, when you become successful in the future, if you lack clothes, water, or a servant girl to warm your bed, I hope you can consider us sisters first. We will always be waiting for you. Hiyu, who boldly spoke out his thoughts, directly pulled his stunned sister and rushed towards the Heart Moon sect like a gust of wind. Hiyu's sudden bold outburst of his strange thoughts made Howren stunned. Then, he touched his face and planned to look in the mirror to see if he had suddenly become handsome. Otherwise, how could he have been so lucky in love for a period of time? When Howren returned to the bear's back and gestured for it to speed up to Mount Xiang, he then noticed Ryu's faint smile. Ryu, I don't know why Hiyu has such strange thoughts, but I promise you that I definitely don't have such thoughts, and I will never agree to her request. He didn't know what was going on, but facing Ryu's faint smile, Howren instinctively felt nervous and immediately defended himself. I don't object to you having a servant girl to warm your bed, but whether the He family's 2 little girls are qualified or not, I need to decide. In the face of Howren's first explanation and promise, Ryu put away her faint smile and then began to declare her sovereignty over Howren step by step. Chapter 419. Echo Mountain was not a single mountain peak, but a unique mountain range formed by hundreds of strangely shaped mountains that were connected to each other. Echo Mountain was located at the junction of the second-rate sects, the 100 Gate, the Qingsheng sect, and the Emperor Qin's kingdom. It was a chaotic place that no one cared about. In the Echo Mountain range, there were a total of 19 bandit groups. The leader of each bandit group was an expert in the Martial King realm. Among them, the 18 bandit groups belonged to the Echo Mountain Bandit Group, which was the strongest in the Echo Mountain range and had the longest inheritance, and was supported by a powerful force. These 18 bandit groups could act independently and freely choose the targets to rob and kill. However, the Echo Mountain Bandit Group had the absolute power to supervise, mobilize, appoint, and punish these 18 bandit groups. Ryu introduced this information to Yu Haoran in detail on the way to Echo Mountain. Yu Haoran already had some understanding of the 19 bandit groups and the power structure of the entire Echo Mountain Bandit Group in his previous life. Since he already had some understanding, he still listened patiently because Yu Haoran wanted to know more about the Echo Mountain Bandit Group and the complicated forces behind it. He wanted to see which forces intervened in it and whether the 100 Chi Gate had the strength and opportunity to intervene. Ru Xan, according to the information I learned, it seems that the Echo Mountain Bandit Group has a very close relationship with many second-rate and first-rate sections. They even have the support of top sections. Am I right? After listening to Ryu's introduction for more than 10 minutes about the internal information of the Echo Mountain Bandit Group, but she did not reveal the situation of the various forces behind it, Yu Haoran could not help asking. After thinking for a while, Ryu finally said helplessly, "Haoran, after all, I used to be the leader of the Echo Mountain Bandit Group. I have a deep relationship with the entire bandit group. I can tell you some things, but please forgive me. I can't tell you the deeper secrets for the time being. Forget it. Anyway, we won't have much interaction with the Echo Mountain Bandit Group in the future. It doesn't matter whether I know these secrets or not." Yu Haoran waved his hand and said against his will, "In recent decades, the main reason why the 100 Chi Gate's strength had been declining continuously was because the factional struggles within the sect were too intense. The main reason why the factional competition could not be suppressed, in addition to the ambitions of the peak masters of each faction and the support and instigation of the elders behind them, was also greatly related to the Echo Mountain Bandits. The 100 Chi Gate was located in the southwest direction of the profound sky continent. It was considered a relatively remote and backward location. In order to increase the strength of the sect, they had to continue expanding their territory to the east. In other words, they had to get closer to the center of the profound sky continent. However, this mountain range just happened to block the expansion of the 100 Chi Gate's influence. If the 100 Chi Gate wanted to expand its influence to the Qingcheng Pai and the Emperor Qin's kingdom, it would be impossible to bypass Xiangshan. Therefore, it was inevitable that they would have the most direct conflict with the Xiangshan Bandit Group. According to the information that Yu Haoran had learned, the 100 Chi Gate had launched at least 5 large-scale expeditions in the hundreds of years after the establishment of the Echo Mountain Bandits. However, the result of each expedition was that the experts of the 100 Chi Gate returned in defeat. This caused the strength of the Echo Mountain Bandits to become stronger and stronger, and their reputation to become greater and greater. It was also because the sect's influence and strength could not continue to expand and improve that those peak masters put their excess energy into factional struggles. As a shrewd woman, how could Ryu not see that Yu Haoran's indifferent attitude just now was just an act? She was afraid that he was eager to know the deeper secrets of the Echo Mountain Bandits for the sake of Chu Zhongyu, who had just taken office. However, when she became the leader of the Echo Mountain Bandits, she once swore by the rules of heaven that she would never reveal the deepest secrets of the Echo Mountain Bandits for the rest of her life. Now, she had finally found her happiness with great difficulty. She did not want to break the oath and lose the happiness that she had yet to fully obtain. With He Xiong exerting his full strength, Yu Haoran and Ryu successfully arrived at the periphery of Echo Mountain in less than an hour. Looking at the endless mountain range that had not changed much from the memory of his previous life, Yu Haoran's heart was filled with emotions. In his previous life, although he had only stayed in the Echo Mountain Bandits for 3 months, it was precisely because of the experience of these 3 months that not only did it allow him to truly experience the baptism of a big scene, but it also gave him a deep understanding of the sinister and complicated nature of human nature. This kind of spiritual sharpening was the main reason why his mental state cultivation could always be far higher than his own cultivation in the future cultivation. At the same time, it was also because of the experience of these 3 months that he understood the cruel environment outside the 100 Chi Gate's sphere of influence. It allowed him to adapt to the fear and uneasiness after leaving the 100 Chi Gate in the shortest time possible, thus officially starting to rise from the Tianxin continent. Howren, if you want to enter the Echo Mountain Bandits, in addition to passing through the territories of the 18 bandits, there's also a small path that only the great leader knows. When Ryu saw Yu Howren, who was deep in thought, she thought that he was shocked by the strange environment of Echo Mountain, so she did not disturb him. She waited until Yu Howren came back to his senses before she reminded him. "This is your base camp. I'll listen to you." Yu Howren nodded and agreed. They went around to the south side of the Echo Mountain range, in front of a dense forest that was not very big, but the trees were quite luxuriant. "Howren, there's an underground secret passage in this dense forest. It can directly reach my bedroom in the headquarters of the Echo Mountain Bandits at the fastest and safest speed," Ryu said with a hint of arrogance as she pointed at the forest in front of her. "I'm afraid that this secret passage was built by the great leader of the Echo Mountain Bandits in the past." Yu Howren said sarcastically, as if he could not stand the arrogance in Ryu's tone when she talked about the Echo Mountain Bandits. "No matter who built it, I'm the only one who knows about this secret passage now." Ryu rolled her eyes at Yu Howren with dissatisfaction and stepped into the dense forest. In this regard, Yu Howren could only smile bitterly. He could not help but doubt the words that Ryu once said when she was forcing him to marry her. "You're a woman who's 3 years older than me, and you're hugging a golden brick. If you marry me, you'll only live a happy life." Now, the two of them had not officially established a relationship, but she had already begun to show her overbearing side. If they really got married, then wouldn't he be completely suppressed by her? It seemed that he had to stick to his heart for their relationship in the future. Shaking his head, Yu Howren drove the messy thoughts out of his mind and stepped into the dense forest. The area of the dense forest was not large. It only took 5 minutes to reach the center of the dense forest. Ryu, who had entered the dense forest in advance, was standing in front of a big tree with a diameter of about a bucket. Hearing the sound of footsteps behind her, Ryu turned around and a trace of apology flashed across her face. However, she did not explain anything. She just took out a piece of yellowish tree bark from her storage ring and directly stuck it on the tree trunk where the bark was missing. As the yellowish tree bark stuck tightly on the tree trunk, a gap that could allow a person to pass through opened up in the middle of the tree trunk. "Follow my footsteps closely." Twisting her body to remind Yu Howren, Ryu took off the tree bark that she had just stuck on the tree trunk and stepped into the gap. The secret passage that led to the Echo Mountain Bandits headquarters was directly connected to all the peaks and went straight to the Echo Mountain Bandits headquarters. Therefore, after entering the secret passage, under Ryu's lead, the two of them only spent more than 10 minutes to reach the entrance of the secret passage. Wait a moment. Chapter 420. In the secret passage. "Ryu, wait a minute." Yu Howren frowned and reminded Ryu as he reached out to press her shoulder. "Howren, what's wrong?" Ryu turned her head and asked in confusion. "Ryu, are you sure that this secret passage leads directly to your bedroom?" After continuing to frown and sniff for a while, Yu Howren asked. "Yes." Nodding, Ryu looked at Yu Howren with even more confusion. She did not understand what he meant. "Then, can you use your divine sense to check the situation outside the secret passage, which is the situation in your bedroom?" Yu Howren suggested without explaining why he stopped her from opening the mechanism at the end of the secret passage. "No." Shaking her head, Ryu explained. The builder of this secret passage was the third leader of the Echo Mountain Bandits 200 years ago. Howren, the third leader of the Echo Mountain Bandits, was not only an expert at the peak of the 9th grade martial saint realm, but also a master who was proficient in formations. In order to ensure the safety and concealment of this secret passage, He set up many formations during the construction process. The entire secret passage is not only extremely hard and can withstand the full blow of an expert at the early stage of the martial venerable realm, but the divine sense of an expert at the martial ancestor realm and above cannot penetrate the walls of the secret passage. They cannot discover the existence of the secret passage at all. Not to mention that I can't use my divine sense now. Even an expert at the early stage of the martial venerable realm can't penetrate the secret passage and observe the situation outside the secret passage. Yu Haoran, what your woman said is true. After Ryu explained the uniqueness of the construction of the secret passage, the Thaling in his sea of consciousness immediately confirmed. In this secret passage, even my divine sense can't reach the outside. Haoran, what happened? After explaining the uniqueness of the construction of the secret passage, Ryu kept looking at Yu Haoran, hoping that he could give her a reasonable explanation. However, she unexpectedly found that he suddenly fell into deep thought. Her heart was full of doubts, so she could not help but ask, Ryu, there's a faint smell of blood at the end of the tunnel, which is your bedroom. Moreover, the smell of blood is very fresh. It's obviously fresh blood that has just flowed out of the body and hasn't completely solidified yet, Yu Haoran said in a serious tone. In fact, there was one more thing that Yu Haoran didn't say. The smell of blood coming from the end of the tunnel was too strong. It was obviously blood from a fatal wound, and this fatal wound was very likely to be the heart. No, I want to go out now. Ryu did not ask Yu Haoran why he could smell blood in the completely sealed tunnel. She suddenly became agitated and wanted to rush out. Fortunately, Yu Haoran pulled her back in time and ordered domineeringly, You can rush out now, but you have to agree to my 2 requests. Speak. Ryu took a deep breath and forcefully suppressed the anger and anxiety in her heart. Her voice was filled with coldness. First, you have to wear a mask. Ryu's peerless beauty had great lethality. It could be seen from a betrayal of her 3 confidants that she had carefully nurtured. He did not want to cause unnecessary conflict because of her beauty after rushing out of the tunnel. Nodding, Ryu took out a mask from her storage ring and put it on her face. Second, after opening the mechanism of the tunnel, let Black Bear, who has stronger defensive abilities, rush out first. Seeing that Ryu had not completely lost her mind, Yu Haoran secretly sighed in relief and then said his second request. All right. Although she was anxious to rush out and see what had happened in her bedroom and whether it was really as she had guessed, Yu Haoran's suggestion just now was for her safety. Therefore, Ryu could only try her best to suppress the anger in her heart. After nodding in agreement, she took out a special key and inserted it into a special keyhole on the wall at the end of the tunnel. Just as Ryu turned the key, Yu Haoran instructed Black Bear, who was standing behind Ryu, Black Bear, directly activate your strongest defense. Nodding, Black Bear's body gradually emitted a wisp of black gas. This black gas faintly emitted the smell of death. Needless to say, Yu Haoran knew that Black Bear had begun to use the secret technique inherited from the ancient divine beast bloodline. Just as Ryu turned the key to the end and the wall in front of her slowly opened, the black gas instantly merged into Black Bear's body. As the wall in front of her slowly opened, Ryu also smelled the stench of blood coming from the front. The stench of blood was very strong, indicating that either there were many people bleeding or they had suffered unimaginable injuries. When the wall completely opened, Black Bear quickly rushed out. 3 seconds later, the Black Bear that had rushed out turned back. Master, there's a bedroom outside. Other than a woman whose heart was pierced and who just lost her life, there are no enemies lying in ambush. Rui, after hearing Black Bear's brief introduction, Ryu cried out a name sorrowfully and then rushed out like the wind. Let's go. Looking at Ryu, who rushed out in a hurry, Yu Haoran shook his head and sighed before instructing Xiong. After stepping through the passageway formed by the wall, Yu Haoran found himself in a room with a very simple layout, but filled with a strong, scholarly aura. If not for the strong stench of blood in the room, the scholarly aura could not only calm one's mind, but also significantly improve one's state of mind cultivation and also eliminate the remnant brutality in one's heart due to excessive killing. Rui, it's my fault. Just as Yuhaoran was observing the layout of the bedroom, Hiruyu's desperately suppressed grief and self-blame sounded in his ears. Walking to Hiruyu's side, he lowered his head and carefully looked at the woman whose heart was pierced. Yuhaoran's eyes suddenly flashed with a trace of surprise. Of course, the surprise was not because of how beautiful the dead woman was. Not to mention, compared to Hiruyu, even compared to the He sisters, this woman's appearance and temperament were 100 times inferior. It could only be said that she was a very ordinary woman. The reason why he was surprised was because he found that this woman was not completely dead. To be more precise, before this woman was killed, she was wearing a treasure that contained a strong life force on her chest. When a murderer had pierced her heart in an instant, the treasure had also been shattered, causing the life force contained in the shattered treasure to fuse into the woman's body due to the inertia of the force. The life force that had fused into her body had been nourishing her mind, allowing her to retain a trace of life force. However, because this woman's cultivation had not reached the martial ancestor realm, she had not condensed a spirit. Once the life force that nourished her mind was completely exhausted, she would undoubtedly die. Chapter 421. In the boudoir. Although Hiruyu's sad performance just now had fully demonstrated the deep feelings between the two, Yuhaoran had to further confirm it. Rui could maintain her vitality for at least 3 to 5 days because of the vitality nourishing her mind. However, as long as she was awakened, it would only take 1 minute at most. The rapid consumption of vitality would cause her to die completely. Hiryu had to make a choice between maintaining her vitality for 3 to 5 days or awakening her immediately. We are like sisters. Hiryu clenched her fists and suppressed the sadness in her heart as she replied. Ryu, in fact, Rui is not dead now. Her current situation is... Yuhaoran briefly introduced Rui's state and the consequences of awakening her, and then gave her the choice. After pondering for nearly 5 minutes, Hiryu took a deep breath and said to Yuhaoran, Haoran, as the leader of the Xiangshan bandits, my bedroom has always been a forbidden area in Xiangshan. Without my permission, no one can enter my bedroom, not even the experts behind the Xiangshan bandits. Hiryu said sadly as she reached out and stroked Rui's face, which was unusually pale due to excessive blood loss. Sister Rui knew that the bedroom was a forbidden area, but she still broke in. It means that she thought of this way to tell me that there was a fatal change in Xiangshan. Speaking of this, Hiryu took a deep breath and said while gritting her teeth, so if Sister Rui had to make a choice, she would definitely choose to wake up now. Okay. Since Hiryu had made a choice, Yuhaoran did not hesitate. He bent down and picked up Rui from Hiruyu's arms, and then laid her flat on the bed in the bedroom. Then, he took out 9 spiritual herbs that contained great poison from the storage ring, and then used the fire of Dantian to refine and fuse the 9 spiritual herbs that contained great poison. Finally, he condensed a drop of venom that emitted a foul smell. Haoran, what is this? Hiryu, who was pinching her nose, asked with disgust. Poisonous soul liquid, Yuhaoran explained as he placed the venom in Rui's pierced heart. If the fire of the earth's core and the elixir furnace are used to further refine, the poisonous soul liquid can be further upgraded and condensed into a poisonous soul pill. Haoran, is it a poisonous soul pill that can melt the divine soul below the martial sage realm? Hiryu asked with a look of horror. That's right. After the venom had completely integrated into Rui's body, Yuhaoran nodded and confirmed while mobilizing his Yuan Qi to condense silver needles and continuously piercing Rui's acupoints. Haoran, can you refine a complete poisonous soul pill through the fire of the earth's core and the elixir furnace? After receiving confirmation, Hiryu suddenly recalled how Yuhaoran had used his Dantian flame to familiarize himself with the process of purifying the spiritual herbs. I'm 99% sure that I can refine a poisonous soul pill below the 7th level. I'm 70% sure that I can refine a poisonous soul pill below the 6th level. As for a poisonous soul pill above the 5th level, I need the help of the fire of the spirit. I can't refine it for the time being." Although he did not know why Ryu, who was immersed in sorrow, suddenly became emotional, Howard did not have any intention to hide his alchemy skills and introduced them truthfully. "That's great." Secretly applauding, Ryu said to Howard in an excited tone, "Howard, there's an elixir furnace of the lower sage realm in the treasure house of the Echo Mountain Bandits. Moreover, that elixir furnace has a special flame that can improve your alchemy skills." Howard, who was piercing Rui's acupoint, was shocked when he heard that there was a lower sage realm elixir furnace with a special flame. Fortunately, his strong state of mind allowed him to calm down quickly. So, he did not make a mistake. Then, he did not respond to Ryu for the time being. Instead, he sped up the speed of the needle technique. After the last needle was pierced, Howard turned around and looked at Ryu. Then, he asked in a nervous tone, "Ryu, the sage low-grade pill furnace you mentioned, is it carved with a tree, a blade of grass, a flower, a stone, or a person?" "Yes." Although a lower sage realm elixir furnace could greatly improve one's alchemy skills, it was not enough to make Howard so nervous. "Ryu, when I drive the fire of the elixir furnace with my spirit power, does the flame appear green?" The confirmation of the first feature made Howard even more nervous, because he was very afraid now. He was afraid that the elixir furnace was not the legendary elixir furnace that he had imagined. "Yes." Ryu nodded and confirmed. She recalled that when she had just obtained the elixir furnace, she had used her spirit power to drive the flame in the elixir furnace. The flame had indeed appeared green. "Howard, what are you doing?" Ryu had just responded to Howard's second question when she suddenly found herself in his tight embrace. She instinctively wanted to push him away. Although she had taken the initiative to force him to marry her, she was still a girl in the end. She had never come into contact with any man. Now, she had suddenly been hugged by a man. So, she must have felt nervous in her heart. Not to mention, Howard's body was emitting the smell of male hormones. It made Ryu feel hot all over. Her limbs felt weak. "Ryu, I'm really sorry. I was too excited a moment ago." Ryu had instinctively pushed him away. She had immediately calmed down. However, Howard was sensitive. He had quickly discovered his rashness. So, he stepped back while apologizing and explaining. When Howard let go of her embrace and stepped back, a trace of disappointment and regret emerged in Ryu's heart. She regretted that she had instinctively pushed him away. However, when Howard had hugged her, she did not feel any disgust in her heart. She could tell that Howard was destined to be her man. Thinking of this, Ryu could not help but feel shy. In order to alleviate this feeling of shyness, she could only think of a way to change the topic. "Howard, what's going on with that pill furnace? How could it make you, who has a good mental state cultivation, lose your composure?" If my guess is correct, that pill furnace is very likely the natal pill furnace of the person known as Holy Elixir Miaozuan from 30,000 years ago. Howard took a deep breath and tried to speak as calmly as possible. "Holy Elixir Miaozuan." After thinking carefully, Ryu shook her head, indicating that she had never heard of this person's origins. Holy Elixir Miaozuan was the only Holy Elixir Miaozuan in the past 100,000 years who was able to refine a rank 2 peak, rank 9 Emperor pill with a cultivation of peak, rank 9 Martial Honorable. His alchemy cultivation was close to the divine realm. Seeing Ryu's blank face, Howard could only use his alchemy cultivation and pill grade to explain the strength of Holy Elixir Miaozuan. Tightly covering her mouth, Ryu looked at Howard with a face full of shock. A rank 2 peak, rank 9 Emperor pill was the best pill that was suitable for Emperor Wu's peak, rank 9 Emperor pill. It was the limit of a mortal pill. With just one step, the grade of the pill would be able to leave the pill embryo and attract lightning tribulation. From there, it would become a divine pill. With such a profound alchemy cultivation, The grade of his natal pill furnace was probably not as simple as a Saint Lo rank 9 Emperor pill furnace. Howren, then what is the true grade of that pill furnace? Peak rank 9 Emperor pill furnace, and it has already formed a weapon spirit with its own consciousness. Yu Howren replied, Impossible. A peak rank 9 Emperor pill furnace. Hiryu thought that she would be very shocked. However, she suddenly remembered that a peak rank 9 Emperor pill furnace had several characteristics, and that pill furnace seemed ordinary. She immediately suppressed the doubts in her heart and asked in shock. Chapter 422. In the boudoir. Miss, why are you back? Just when Yu Howren shook his head to indicate that he didn't know why the pill furnace left by the pill Saint Miao Zun didn't show the majesty of an emperor-level instrument, a weak voice suddenly came from the bed behind him. Sister Rui, you're awake. Originally, because of the mysterious origin of the pill furnace and the emperor level, Hiryu's inner sadness and anger were barely dispersed. But after seeing Rui wake up, Hiryu, whose sadness and anger immediately returned, appeared in front of Rui in a flash. Her eyes were red, and she asked with murderous intent, Tell me, who is the one who tried to kill you? Miss, don't worry about me. You should leave Mount Xiang now. The 4 great protectors, the 4 great emissaries, and the leaders of the 18 roads plan to join forces to deal with you. Without answering Hiryu's question, Rui urged with a hurried expression, Who gave them the courage to join forces to deal with me? After hearing Rui's persuasion, Hiryu stared with her beautiful eyes and said with a slightly disdainful expression, But Yu Howren, who was standing behind her, didn't think so. When they fought on the mountain peak containing the dark gold stone from the reaction of the green, blue, and black emissaries, Hiryu had the secret method of transformation. Perhaps the entire Mount Xiang bandit group knew about it. Knowing that Hiryu could have the strength of the 5th rank, 8th rank after transformation, they still dared to join forces to deal with her, indicating that they had the means to restrict her transformation. Moreover, the 4 great protectors, the 4 great emissaries, and the leaders of the 18 roads were basically the top experts in the entire Mount Xiang. To be able to make 26 experts join forces to deal with Hiryu, Yu Howren suspected that there must be a higher status and stronger expert in the dark. Otherwise, they wouldn't be willing to join forces. Miss, just listen to my advice and leave Mount Xiang quickly. Seeing that Hiryu didn't notice the crisis at all, Rui continued to persuade her with an anxious expression. Ryu, if you have something to say it quickly. Rui has less than a minute. Seeing that Hiryu didn't care about Rui's persuasion at all and intended to continue to ridicule those people she looked down on, Yu Howren quickly reminded her. Miss, who is this young master? After waking up, Rui only worried about how to let Hiryu escape from Mount Xiang quickly and did not notice Yu Howren standing behind her. At this moment, when she suddenly heard Yu Howren's voice, she looked up and asked with an ambiguous smile on her face. Big Sister Rui, he is the first person to see my true face. He will also be the man of my life. Seeing Rui notice Yu Howren behind her, Hiryu's face turned red. However, when she thought about the hug just now, not only did she not feel disgusted, but she also yearned for that kind of strong hug. Hiryu's shyness was instantly replaced by happiness. Moreover, an elder sister was like a mother. In her heart, Rui was like a biological mother. Her relationship with Yu Howren required the approval and blessings of those closest to her. Only then would her life be perfect. Therefore, Hiryu boldly revealed the relationship between them. Miss, although I don't know this young master, he gives me the feeling that he is very outstanding and valued. He is a person worth entrusting my life to. Hiryu's bold way of revealing her feelings surprised Rui, and she also knew that she might have really found her true love. Otherwise, no matter how bold she was, she would not dare to express her feelings so shamelessly. For Hiryu's choice, Rui could only give her the most sincere blessings and the last plea before her death. Young master, my young master's fate is more difficult. which causes her temper to be a little irritable, and she does not think before speaking and doing things. But her nature is not bad. I hope you can consider my dying request and be more considerate of my young master in the future. Like Ryu, I will call you Big Sister Rui. After seeing that Rui had woken up, she did not scream because of the pain caused by the loss of her heart, nor did she ask about her safety. Instead, she was thinking about Ryu wholeheartedly. Yu Haoran could not help but think of his sister, Yusiki. In his previous life, in order to free herself from her status as a servant, she gave herself to Haoqing and was forced to commit suicide in the end. What difference was there between his sister's actions and Rui's current actions? So, while feeling touched, Yu Haoran did not want Rui to leave this world with regrets. In the end, he did not know whether he was going against his heart or whether he was making the promise willingly. Big Sister Rui, don't worry. In the future, I will treat Ruxin wholeheartedly. I will not let her suffer the slightest grievance. Then I can rest assured. Yu Haoran did not know whether his promise earlier was sincere or fake, but as a woman, especially one who had experienced the vicissitudes of life, she could see and hear the sincerity in Yu Haoran's promise. So, she said with a relieved smile, "Oh no." Seeing Rui's aura rapidly fading away, Yu Haoran knew that this was bad. In a flash, he appeared beside her and fed her a pill that contained vitality that he had prepared beforehand. "Ryu, Big Sister Rui only has 30 seconds. I hope you can cherish it." When Rui's fading aura stabilized again, Yu Haoran reminded Ryu. Then, he got up and left the bed. Then, he went straight to the door of the bedroom and ordered Thaling. "Thaling, use your divine sense to the limit and help me check the situation of Mount Echo." Yu Haoran, when you used the poisonous soul fluid to awaken Rui's will, I had already begun to use my divine sense to observe the situation of the entire Mount Echo. Thaling indicated that he had already observed everything without Yu Haoran's order. "What's the result?" Yu Haoran immediately asked. 26 experts whose cultivation is above the 5th grade of Martial King are gathered in a meeting hall not far from the bedroom. And in the first seat of the meeting hall, there is an expert who has comprehended the power of law and whose cultivation has reached the peak of the 3rd grade of Martial Saint. A Martial Saint expert who has comprehended the power of law. Yu Haoran repeated to himself and said to Thaling, "Thaling, it seems that this expert in the Martial Saint realm is the real reason why the leader of the 19 bandits dared to betray Ryu." Thaling in the sea of consciousness nodded and replied, "Yu Haoran, I think so too. After all, without an expert above the Martial Saint realm, a mere 20 or so experts in the Martial King realm would never dare to provoke Ryu, who can transform into the non-weaving bird." At this point, Thaling changed his tone and said in a dignified tone, "Yu Haoran, just now, when I used my divine sense to observe the entire Mount Echo, I accidentally found that there were several extremely powerful auras hidden under the ground of Mount Echo. One of them is close to the Martial Saint realm, that is, an expert who has reached the peak of the 9th grade of Martial Saint realm." "What?" Yu Haoran shouted in shock. Because if Thaling could say that the aura was powerful, it must be an expert of the Martial Saint realm, and at least the cultivation of the 5th grade of Martial Saint realm. What's more, among the auras hidden under the Mount Echo, there was an aura that had reached the peak of the 9th grade of Martial Saint realm. This made Yu Haoran shocked, and he could not help but start to guess. Chapter 423. In the boudoir, Yu Haoran, after dealing with Rui's matter, let He Xiong take you to an altitude of tens of thousands of meters. I want to carefully observe the geographical structure of Echo Mountain from a high altitude. Just as Yu Haoran gradually calmed down from the shock, the pagoda spirit instructed. In fact, it was not only Yu Haoran who was shocked when he heard that there were so many experts of the Martial Sage realm hidden under Echo Mountain. When Thaling learned about these hidden experts through his divine thoughts, he was as shocked as Yu Haoran. However, relying on his divine thoughts that had recovered to the early stage of Martial Venerable, He quietly observed an expert at the peak of 6th grade martial sage at close range and found that there was something wrong with this expert state. How should he put it? Although this expert at the peak of 6th grade martial sage had been absorbing the spiritual chi of heaven and earth, and his comprehension of the power of law had been improving, his divine soul had fallen into a state of suspended animation. Moreover, this state of suspended animation was very similar to a forbidden method in the legends. Therefore, he proposed that Howren use the black bear to fly tens of thousands of meters high and verify his guess through the direction of the terrain of Echo Mountain. If his guess was really confirmed through the direction of the terrain, then this forbidden method would also be a heaven-defying opportunity for Howren. That's not a problem. Howren nodded and agreed with Thaling's proposal. Even if he did not use the black bear, he could also fly tens of thousands of meters high with a flood dragon transformed by the 7 changes of the flood dragon. However, he could not hold on for long. However, immediately after, he changed his tone and asked in a dignified tone, "Thaling, how should we deal with the expert at the peak of 3rd grade martial sage outside? Although the power of the sky-facing stick and the phoenix dances in the 9th heaven was close to the martial venerable realm and had reached the limit of the peak of 9th grade martial sage, this power was only pure strength and did not contain the power of law. If they were facing a martial sage expert who had comprehended the power of law, they could use the power of law to divert or reduce the power of the martial skill. In the worst-case scenario, they could use the power of law to easily break free from the martial skill. Therefore, whether it was him or Hiryu who wanted to defeat and kill that peak 3rd grade martial saint expert by relying on the one staff facing the sky, or Hiryu's phoenix dances 9 heavens, it was basically wishful thinking. Howren, it's not impossible to defeat and kill that peak 3rd grade martial saint, Thaling said confidently. Actually, Thaling had already started thinking about how to deal with the peak 3rd grade martial saint expert when his spiritual sense had just discovered him. Combining the strongest methods possessed by Howren and Hiryu, as well as the special environment of Reverberating Mountain, he finally came up with a way to defeat a peak 3rd grade martial saint expert. "Tell me," Howren asked excitedly. "Howren, I will teach you a formation that can shield a martial saint expert from using the power of law for a short period of time. A martial saint who has lost the power of law is only slightly stronger than a martial emperor expert in terms of divine soul and strength. With the strongest attack methods possessed by you and your woman, you have a 90% chance of defeating him and a 60% chance of killing him." Hearing the method provided by Thaling, Howren did not feel excited. Instead, he started thinking quickly and began to consider the feasibility of this method. After considering for nearly 3 minutes, Howren turned his head and glanced at Hiryu, who was crying bitterly on the dead Rui. Then he turned around and asked the most fatal flaw of this method that he had just found. "Thaling, if you want to defeat or kill a peak 3rd grade martial saint expert with a formation that shields the power of law, there's an innate condition that must be solved. Otherwise, your plan will not work at all. Tell me." Thaling gestured. After all, a 3rd grade martial saint expert who sensed the power of law was too powerful. If there was a slight mistake in the plan just now, it was very likely that Howren and Hiryu would be killed. Therefore, when Howren took the initiative to point out the shortcomings of the plan, Thaling was not angry. Instead, he was very happy. "Thaling, how can we set up this formation under the eyes of a martial saint expert?" Thaling had already considered Howren's problem, so he said confidently, "Howren, I have already tested it repeatedly with my divine thought. Your woman's bedroom is affected by the secret passage, so there are still some restrictions on the power of divine thought. I can use the power of divine thought to check the situation in Xiangshan because my divine soul has already recovered to the early stage of martial saint. With a special secret method, my divine thought can break through the restrictions of the bedroom and expand outside. And that peak 3rd grade martial saint expert is absolutely unable to use his divine thought to observe any movements in the bedroom. Otherwise, you and your woman have already been in the bedroom for more than 10 minutes. Why haven't you alerted the other party? Fouling, you mean to use this bedroom to set up a formation that shields the other party from using the power of law. Pointing at the bedroom, Yu Haoran asked with great interest. That's right, the tower genie nodded. While confirming Zhang Xian's words, it also explained how it made the best use of the bedroom. Yu Haoran, next I will refine the formation flags to set up the formation. Then I will use the formation flags to accelerate the speed of setting up the formation and increase the power of the formation. Fouling, since you are using the formation flags to set up the formation, then wouldn't it be easier to rely on the powerful power of divine thought to set up the formation without alerting the other party? Yu Haoran asked with some confusion. Although this bedroom was affected by the secret passage and could restrict the other party's divine thought, if he were to set up the formation, he would need to learn, experience, and comprehend it on the spot. Doing so would waste a lot of time, and because he was unfamiliar with it, he wouldn't be able to set up the most perfect formation. Yu Haoran, the formation I'm going to teach you is a formation that is both offensive and defensive. As the person setting up the formation, you're not only the cornerstone of the formation's defense, but also the starting point of the formation's strongest attack. If I were to set up the formation, although I can set up a perfect formation as the weapon spirit, I can only use the formation's defense and not its strongest attack. After briefly introducing the general situation of the formation, Fouling used his divine thought to input the information of the formation into Yu Haoran's sea of consciousness so that he could experience the mystery of the formation himself. After receiving the knowledge of the formation, Yu Haoran turned his head to look at Ruyu and found that she was holding the Rui scepter tightly, softly recalling their past experiences. With a sigh, Yu Haoran directly sat down cross-legged and then began to experience the formation taught by Fouling. With continuous in-depth learning and experience, and then combined with the understanding of the formation in his previous life, Yu Haoran found that the formation taught by Fouling was called the elemental soul-locking formation. The elemental soul-locking formation was not complicated. It could even be said to be very simple, but the requirements for setting up the formation were very high. The first requirement was that the 9 formation flags needed to set up the formation not only had to contain the 5 basic elements of gold, wood, water, fire, and earth, but also 4 types of variant elements that supported the 5 basic elements. For example, wind, rain, thunder, light, ice, and so on. However, Yu Haoran was not worried about the first requirement of the formation flags. After all, with Fouling's refining ability at the Grandmaster level, it was not difficult to refine the 9 formation flags that contained different elements. What really worried Yu Haoran was that as the person setting up the formation, not only did he need to integrate his mind and Yuanli with the formation, but he also needed to use his mind to control the 9 formation flags and overdraw his Yuanli to maintain the operation of the formation. Chapter 4:24. In the bedroom. How is it? Seeing Yu Haoran slowly opening his eyes, Fouling, who had refined the 5th formation flag, asked with concern. Although the arrangement of the formation is very simple, the requirements are very high. Yu Haoran gave a simple evaluation and then took out more than 30 spiritual herbs of different grades from storage ring. He planned to refine some spiritual liquid that could instantly restore his spiritual chi to cope with the consumption of spiritual chi after the formation was activated. Haoran, what are you going to do? After nearly half an hour of crying and venting, Ruyu gradually calmed down the sadness in her heart. Then, she wanted to discuss with Yu Haoran about how to make arrangements for Rui's funeral. Unexpectedly, she saw him take out a bunch of elixirs. She couldn't help but ask, I'm going to refine a spiritual liquid that can turn the tables and save one's life. Yu Haoran waved his hand and motioned for Ruyu to come to his side. A spiritual liquid that can turn the tables and save one's life. Ruyu repeated and looked at Yu Haoran in confusion. Here's the thing. Yu Haoran told her about what the pagoda spirit had observed with its divine sense. He picked out some information that could be shared with her. Ruyu, I plan to use this special bedroom of yours to set up a formation trap that can kill a third-grade martial saint. After listening to Yu Haoran's explanation and plan, Hiryu looked at Yu Haoran in shock. Although she had bribed a high-ranking person in the 100 Chi Gate, and that person could know Yu Haoran's situation at any time and let her know Yu Haoran's whereabouts immediately, she now found that she still didn't know much about Yu Haoran. Profound alchemy cultivation, unfathomable formation skills. Yu Haoran's performance just now shocked Hiryu and made her very nervous. However, with the 3-year agreement and Yu Haoran's promise to Rui, Hiryu quickly calmed down and began to consider whether Yu Haoran's plan was feasible. Haoran, I think you might have missed a crucial point. Perhaps because Hiryu was more familiar with and understood the situation of the Shangshan bandits, she soon discovered that there was a very obvious but fatal flaw in Yu Haoran's plan that she did not notice. Speak. The success of the plan was not only related to whether he could kill an expert at the peak of the third-grade martial saint and save his own life, but it also determined whether he could finally enter the treasure house of the Echo Mountain bandits and obtain the pill furnace that could help him improve his alchemy cultivation. All your considerations and plans were only aimed at the peak third-grade martial saints. You did not notice the leaders of the 18 bandits, as well as the 4 great protectors and 4 great envoys of our resounding mountain bandits. At this point, Hiryu sighed. Although the reputation of our resounding mountain bandits is not good, every martial artist who can become a bandit is a genius with a certain amount of talent and potential. Otherwise, joining the bandit group would not make a fortune, but would instead be courting death. After all, the mission of the bandits is to kill and rob. As the 4 great protectors and 4 great envoys, as well as the leaders of the 18 bandits, these 26 people are even more geniuses among geniuses. They're all top experts who have the ability to challenge those of a higher realm. Haoran, don't think that my cultivation is about to break through to the martial monarch realm. My strength is far superior to these people. However, without the support of the experts behind me and the deterrent power of the transformation secret technique, it would be impossible for me to suppress these ambitious leaders. Hearing Hiryu pointing out the flaw in the plan and introducing the 26 leaders of the resounding mountain bandits, Yu Haoran smiled confidently and pointed to He Xiong, who was standing beside the bookshelf. Those 26 martial king realm experts, leave them to He Xiong. Shaking her head, Hiryu did not speak as confidently as Yu Haoran. Haoran, you didn't understand what I meant just now. Logically speaking, by transforming into a non-woven bird, I should be able to completely suppress these people even without the support of the experts behind me. But what happened in the end? Speaking of this, Hiryu could not help but smile bitterly and shake her head. Ryu, could it be that these people still have a method that even you can't deal with after transforming into a strange beast? She stopped talking halfway. Yu Haoran, who was eager to know her answer, could not help but ask. The 4 great protectors have mastered a formation of the 4 divine beasts joint attack. With their cultivation at the peak of the 7th grade martial king realm, they can display the strength of a peak of the 3rd grade martial monarch realm. The 4 great protectors and 4 great envoys jointly master a formation of the 8 plum blossom pillars, which can allow them to display the strength of a peak of the 7th grade martial monarch realm. The 4 great protectors, 4 great envoys, and 18 bandit leaders jointly master a formation of 30 earth aura, which can allow them to display the strength of a peak of the 9th grade martial monarch realm. Although revealing the true strength of the Shangshan bandits would violate the oath she made under the rules of heaven, she was smart enough to get up and leave Yu Haoran. Then, facing the dead Rui, she asked in a pleading tone, Sister Rui, the other party's strength is so strong. What do you think I should do? Hiryu's strange way of doing things made Yu Haoran quickly guess why she was unwilling to reveal the secret of the Shangshan bandits. It was probably related to the fact that when she took over as the leader, she was forced by the people behind her to swear under the rules of heaven that she could not reveal the secret of the Shangshan bandits. Shaking his head, Yu Haoran knew that she could not avoid the backlash of the oath by changing the target just now. Therefore, he got up and walked to Hiruyu's side. Reaching out his hand to touch her hair, Yu Haoran said with a voice full of tenderness, "Don't say it. I won't ask. I will bear all the consequences, okay?" Haoran, seeing that Yu Haoran not only guessed her difficulties, but also took the initiative to help her bear the backlash of breaking the oath, Hiryu was so moved that she directly hugged Yu Haoran's strong waist and quietly felt the masculine scent emanating from his body. After waiting for nearly 10 minutes, Hiryu did not find that she had been hurt by the backlash of the rules. She could not help but look up at Yu Haoran. "Ryu, tell me in detail about the oath you made at the beginning." Seeing that Hiryu did not suffer from the backlash of the oath, Yu Haoran was also puzzled. At the same time, he suspected that the oath she had made at the beginning did not conflict with the information she had just revealed. Therefore, he needed to know what kind of oath she had made in order to avoid inadvertently triggering the backlash of the oath when she was not paying attention or was emotional. "The oath I made under the rules of heaven was like this." Then, Hiryu told Yu Haoran the oath she had made at the beginning word for word. After carefully pondering the oath Hiryu had made, he found that what could really cause the backlash of the oath was not the leaking of the strength of the Echo Mountain bandits, but the tangled interests behind it. Knowing the specific content of the oath, Yu Haoran also knew what he should pay attention to next. Then, he began to think about how to deal with the 26 martial king experts of the Echo Mountain bandits, who were proficient in the combined attack formation technique. There were only two ways to deal with or delay the 26 martial king experts so that they could not affect his trap to kill the expert at the peak of the 3rd level martial saint realm. One was to increase the strength of the black bear so that it could break through to the peak of the 9th level of the 5th level in the shortest time. Chapter 425. In the boudoir. Shaking his head, Yu Haoran directly rejected the first idea, because when he helped He Xiong break through to the 8th grade of the 5th rank, he found that He Xiong's physique was somewhat special. If it took a 6th grade first grade pill to raise the level of an exotic beast of the same level, then if he wanted to raise He Xiong's level by a small level, he would need at least 10 times or even dozens of times of a 6th grade first grade pill. And with the amount of pills he had now, it was impossible to satisfy He Xiong's breakthrough, even if it was just a small-level breakthrough. Therefore, it was not a good idea to use He Xiong to deal with the 26 martial king experts who were proficient in the joint attack technique. The second method was to lure the peak 3rd grade martial saint experts into the formation and instantly kill 1 or 2 of the 4 protectors so that they could not use the most powerful joint attack technique. Then, he would hand them over to He Xiong to deal with. However, this method was more risky. It was very likely to arouse the vigilance of the martial saint experts, causing them to not fall into the trap set in advance. Of course, Yu Haoran had another way to easily solve this problem, but he did not want to use it. Or rather, considering Hiruyu's feelings, he did not dare to use it easily now. That was the spirit-slaughtering pill that could kill anyone below the martial emperor realm. If he wanted to use the spirit-slaughtering pill to kill 26 martial king experts, especially these 26 experts who were top geniuses with outstanding talent and potential, he would need at least 3 spirit-slaughtering pills while fully activating all the toxicity of the spirit-slaughtering pill. And he himself was not very clear about how powerful the 3 spirit-slaughtering pills would be after activating all the toxicity. But according to the range of the spirit-slaughtering pill, all the creatures in the mountain where the Echo Mountain bandits were located and the 9 mountains connected to it would die under the huge poison of the spirit-slaughtering pill. Although Yu Haoran was not very clear about how many creatures there were in the 10 mountains, through the 3 months he had lived in the Echo Mountain bandits in his previous life, the number of bandits on these 10 mountains was probably no less than tens of thousands. If wild beasts and exotic beasts were counted, the number would probably exceed 100,000. He was worried that if he killed more than 100,000 creatures in one breath, it would make Hiryu hate him and affect their relationship. After pondering for a while, Yu Haoran decided that he could only take the risk and use the second method, which was to kill the first two protectors before they could react. In the end, if they really aroused the vigilance of the martial sage expert, they could temporarily retreat to the secret passage and then use the secret passage that could withstand the attack of the early stage of Martial Venerable to leave Echo Mountain and give up the pill furnace in the treasure house of the Echo Mountain bandits. Ryu, according to my understanding of the non-woven bird, it seems to have an extremely fast secret technique called life and death on a thin line. I wonder if he can grasp and use it now. Even if he decided to take the risk and use the second method, he had to ensure that the risk was successful. Therefore, Yuhaoran began to use his understanding of the black bear, and he Ryu to find ways to increase the success rate of his adventures. He thought of the unique secret technique of the non-woven bird that had inherited the bloodline of the phoenix. Yes, Ryu nodded, indicating that she could now use the secret technique of life and death on a thin line. But immediately after, her tone changed, and she reminded him in a serious tone. However, Aaron, to use the secret technique of life and death on a thin line, I need to use nearly half of the non-woven bird's blood essence and half of my soul power in Yuan Li. After using the secret technique of life and death on a thin line, I can't use the secret technique of transformation for 3 days, nor can I use a trace of my soul power in Yuan Li. I'm no different from an ordinary person. Of course, Yuhaoran knew that using the secret technique would have side effects. However, he did not expect that the side effects would be so serious after Ryu used the non-woven bird's secret technique. This made him worried again. After all, in addition to the 26 martial king experts in the Echo Mountain bandits, there are also countless martial grandmasters and martial masters. If these people attacked the bedroom under the orders of their respective leaders, Ryu, who had no ability to fight back, would be in danger. Yuhaoran, as long as you can kill 1 or 2 protectors in the shortest time possible, they will be unable to use the joint attack technique. With the strength of Black Bear and its strong defense, you can defeat and kill the remaining martial king experts and resist the attacks of the other bandits. Your woman will definitely not be harmed. Thaling could not help but remind him when he saw that Yuhaoran was stuck in a dilemma. If you're still worried, you can let your woman immediately return to the secret passage after using the secret technique of life and death on a thin line. With the sturdiness of the secret passage that can withstand the attack of a beginner martial venerable expert, she will definitely not be in any danger. That's right. Thaling's reminder made Yuhaoran instantly make a decision. At the same time, he also knew that he was affected by his chaotic emotions, which caused his thinking to be a little slow. Ryu, when I finish setting up the formation that can shield the power of laws and lure the third-grade martial saint experts into the room, you immediately use the life and death on a thin line and directly kill any of the 4 protectors so that they can't use the joint attack technique. After using the secret technique of life and death on a thin line, you immediately return to the secret passage and leave the rest to me. Yuhaoran instructed with a solemn expression. Shaking her head, Ryu firmly refused. Haoran, there is no problem with using the secret technique of life and death on a thin line. I also have full confidence in killing 1 or 2 protectors. However, I can't return to the secret passage alone to save my life. Yuhaoran had long guessed that Ryu would not listen to him obediently. He had thought of a countermeasure in advance. Ryu, I want you to return to the secret passage not because I want to take the risk alone, but because I want to preserve the opportunity for you and me to escape. What do you mean? Ryu asked in confusion. After returning to the secret passage, don't activate the mechanism to close the secret passage for the time being. In this way, you can pay attention to the situation at any time. If my plan fails and I am unable to successfully kill the martial saint expert, I will be able to retreat to the secret passageway in time and use the secret passageway to escape the Echo Mountain. Yuhaoran reached out his hand to stroke Ryu's beautiful hair as he lied. If the plan failed, with the power of laws that could be used by the peak third-grade martial saint experts, it would be impossible for him to return to the secret passage. However, if he did not say this, Hiryu would definitely not listen to him obediently. She would even think of ways to persuade him to give up the plan to kill the martial saint experts. Okay, it turned out that he wanted her to return to the secret passage in advance to preserve the plan of retreat. After hearing Yu Haoran's explanation, Hiryu certainly would not object. Ryu, these elixirs are used to replenish your blood essence and origin energy. After you return to the secret passage, immediately use these elixirs to recover the consumption of the life and death line secret technique. Try to recover as soon as possible. Seeing that Hiryu had agreed to his plan, Yu Haoran also considered the side effects of her performing the secret technique. He hurriedly took out a portion of the top elixirs and forced them into her hands. Hiryu did not refuse in this regard. After all, the sooner she could eliminate the side effects of performing the secret technique, the sooner she could help Yu Haoran. Ryu, go and adjust your breath first. I have to further familiarize myself with the formation to shield the power of laws and try to be foolproof. Okay. Nodding meekly, Hiryu did not immediately adjust her breath. Instead, she directly opened the entrance of a secret passage and put Rui's body in the secret passage in advance. Chapter 426. In the boudoir. Time ticked by. Yu Haoran, who was immersed in the elemental soul-locking array, found that the more he comprehended this array, the more he could feel the profoundness of the array. Moreover, he also found that when comprehending this array, there was an unimaginable improvement in the strengthening of his mind power. However, with the sound of Thaling completing the refining of the array flag, Yu Haoran hurriedly ended his deep comprehension of the array. Yu Haoran, here you go. 9 palm-sized flags of completely different colors instantly appeared in Yu Haoran's hand. He carefully observed the 9 flags in his hand, then cut his finger and squeezed out 9 drops of blood onto the flags. When the blood completely merged with the flags, Yu Haoran suddenly felt a close connection between himself and the flags. Then he took the elixir that he had prepared in advance to replenish the 9 drops of blood that he had just lost. After ensuring that he was in peak condition, he began to use the 9 flags to set up the elemental soul-locking array. As he was immersed in the profound understanding of the elemental soul-locking array, his understanding of the array had reached a very deep level, allowing him to set up the array easily. Then he directly sat cross-legged in the eye of the array, then took out 10 level 5 and 9 spirit stones and the spiritual liquid that he had just refined. When everything was ready, Yu Haoran nodded to Hiryu. After nodding in response to Yu Haoran, Hiryu directly got up and went to the windowsill of the bedroom. She took a deep breath, suppressed the nervousness in her heart, then opened the window and roared with grief and indignation. Who on earth killed my sister Rui? Mixed with the strength of soul and Yuanli, Hiryu's voice quickly spread to the meeting hall not far from the bedroom. After hearing the familiar roar of grief, sitting on the east side of the meeting hall, an old man in a green robe with a fierce aura said with surprise on his face, "Lord Assistant Minister Zhao, this is Hiryu's voice. It seems that she used a special secret passage to sneak back to the headquarters and found Rui killed in the bedroom. Since you're already back, don't even think about going back." After hearing the green-robed elder's report, the martial saint expert sitting in the main seat of the meeting hall sneered. Then he stood up and ordered in a casual tone, "Let's go. Come with me to see what's so outstanding about the peerless genius that only appears once in 1,000 years in the eyes of the Prime Minister." The 26 martial kings in the hall hurriedly got up and followed behind the martial sage. They left the meeting hall and hurried to Hiryu's bedroom. Taking advantage of the opening of the windowsill and the opportunity of a flaw in the restriction of the secret passage on the spiritual thoughts, Hiryu directly used her spiritual thoughts and began to unscrupulously sweep the entire mountain peak where the Echo Mountain bandits were located. She was determined to find the murderer. However, when she saw the group of people rushing over, especially the peak third-grade martial saint at the front, she panicked a little. Then, he quickly withdrew his divine sense. Not good. I'm afraid Hiruyu wants to use the secret passage in the bedroom to escape. Seeing Hiruyu quickly withdraw her divine sense and quickly close the window, the green-robed elder who was chasing after her with his divine sense shouted loudly. After hearing the green-robed elder's reminder, the martial saint expert's expression changed slightly. You guys come later. I'll go stop her first. After leaving these words, the martial saint expert quickly rushed to Hiruyu's bedroom. Howrin, the peak third-grade martial saint expert, is rushing over. As she closed the window, Hiruyu also noticed the martial saint expert who had increased his speed and was charging towards them. She hurriedly reminded Howrin, Ryu, use the secret transformation technique. The moment the martial saint expert breaks through the window, use the life and death line to kill a protector. Howrin ordered as he formed a seal with his 10 fingers. Nodding, Hiryu immediately used the secret transformation technique. Even if she did not use the power of law, the speed of a peak third-grade martial saint expert was not something that a martial emperor or martial king expert could compare with. Therefore, just as the martial saint's reminder disappeared, he had already rushed to the window sill of the bedroom. Without any hesitation, the martial saint expert directly chose the position where Hiryu had opened the window sill and barged in. Rise! Just as the peak third-grade martial saint expert broke through the window and rushed into the bedroom, Howrin, who had already formed a seal with his 10 fingers, directly imprinted the seal on the main formation flag beside him. Ryu, do it! The moment the formation was completely activated, Howrin immediately informed Hiryu to do it. At the same time, he also began to activate the blood essence of the large power King Kong ape in his body. Life and death line. The moment Howrin activated the formation, Hiryu, who had completed her transformation, instantly extracted half of the non-woven bird's blood essence, as well as half of her own soul power and Yuan Qi. Then, the flames on the non-woven bird's body instantly disappeared. In less than 1/100th of a second, the burning flames instantly appeared in front of the 26 martial king experts who were rushing over. Before the 26 martial king experts could react, the flames that contained half of the non-woven bird's blood essence and half of Hiruyu's soul power and Yuan Qi directly pierced through the heart of the green-clothed old man, who was the strongest at the scene and had a cultivation of early 9th grade martial king. After killing the strongest person, the cyan-clothed old man, the flames that had yet to completely burn out instantly killed a white-clothed old man with a cultivation of peak 8th grade martial king, as well as a middle-aged man in purple attire with a cultivation of peak 6th grade martial king. In the end, the flames that had completely exhausted its energy instantly returned to the non-woven bird's body. Just as the flames that had returned to the bedroom had just possessed the non-woven bird's body, the non-woven bird suddenly shook a little and then changed back to Hiruyu's appearance. At this moment, not only was Hiruyu's face pale and bloodless, she could not even stand steadily. Hiryu directly swallowed the pills she had prepared beforehand. She resisted the weakness of her soul and body and walked step by step towards the secret passage. The green-clothed old man, the white-clothed old man, and a middle-aged man in purple who had been instantly killed by the flames still had joyful smiles on their faces. After rushing forward a dozen steps, they suddenly fell to the ground, giving a fright to the 20 or so martial king experts who had been stunned by the sudden appearance of the flames. It also caused them to wake up from their stunned state. One of the middle-aged men in red instantly appeared beside the green-clothed old man and bent over to flip him over. When he saw the green-clothed old man's heart that had been completely burned to black powder by the flames and the black mark on his forehead, he could not help but turn his head and shout to the other 2 old men in panic. Guardian Vermilion Bird, Guardian Black Tortoise, and Blue Dragon, not only were their hearts burned to powder, even their souls and their consciousness were destroyed. What? After hearing the cries of the middle-aged man in red, an old woman in her 60s wearing a long red robe instantly appeared beside the green-clothed old man. With a single glance, she already knew the true situation of the green-clothed old man. Afterwards, she appeared beside the white-clothed old man and the middle-aged man in purple in a flash. She also checked their conditions, then roared with an expression filled with boundless anger. A line of life and death. This is the secret technique of the non-woven bird's bloodline inheritance. Chapter 427. Just as the red-clothed old woman angrily made a vow to kill Hiruyu, the excited roar of a bear-type exotic beast came from the direction of the bedroom. Accompanied by the roar of the bear-type exotic beast, a black bear with a height of 58 meters, like a giant beast that could hold up the sky, quickly rushed over with large strides. 58 meters, which was the strength of the peak of the 8th stage of the 5th step, was equivalent to the cultivation of the peak of the 8th stage of the Martial King realm. Looking at the black bear that was rushing over quickly, the yellow-robed old man who had been silent all this time immediately ordered, the 4 envoys and the 3 strongest leaders will form the 8 plum blossom combination technique to hold back this black bear. 3rd sister, take everyone to capture Hiruyu alive. 4th brother, even if you use the 8 plum blossom combination technique, you are not a match for that black bear at the peak of the 8th stage of the 5th step. Why don't you let me stay and help you? After hearing the yellow-robed old man's order, the red-clothed old woman quickly shook her head in objection and suggested that she stay and help. 3rd sister, Hiruyu just used the life and death struggle secret technique to kill big brother and 2nd brother, and this black bear immediately appeared. This means that there must be a deep relationship between the two. So, use the fastest speed to capture Hiruyu alive, and then use Hiruyu as a shield. You will definitely be able to make this black bear retreat. Looking at the black bear that was getting closer and closer, the yellow-robed old man explained anxiously. So, whether we can survive or not, whether the Echo Mountain bandits can continue to exist, depends on whether 3rd sister can capture Hiruyu alive in the shortest amount of time. Follow me. After hearing the yellow-robed old man's explanation, the red-clothed old woman immediately shouted, and then turned into a red light, directly rushing to Hiruyu's bedroom. Who are you? Hearing the voice instructing Hiruyu to use the secret technique, the martial saint expert who broke into the formation immediately asked nervously, Skyward Strike. However, Yu Haoran did not pay attention to the question of the martial saint expert. He used the formation to block the power of the law that the martial saint expert could sense. After transforming into the Power King Kong ape, he immediately used the most powerful Skyward Strike technique, striving to eliminate the most threatening peak 3rd stage martial saint expert in the shortest amount of time. Damn it, what kind of array is this? Why can't I sense the power of laws? Accompanied by the energy fluctuations of a martial skill being executed, the martial saint expert instinctively wanted to use the power of laws to break the formation. After ensuring his own safety, he would then look for his opponent to use the formation to trap him. However, when he wanted to use the power of laws, he discovered that there was a special power blocking him from the laws. He was unable to sense the existence of the power of laws at all, which immediately caused him to panic. As the terrifying power formed by the sky-facing staff technique was about to descend upon the martial saint expert's head, he could not help but threaten in terror. Stop! Do you know who I am? I'm a younger cousin of Prime Minister Zhao of the Emperor Qin's kingdom, and the right assistant minister of the Emperor Qin's Ministry of War. If you dare to hurt me, the Emperor Qin's kingdom will slaughter your entire clan. Unfortunately, in the face of the martial saint expert's threat, Yu Haoran's sky-facing staff technique did not stop his attack. Instead, the speed of his attack increased by a few notches. Seeing that his threat had been ignored and that the terrifying power of the staff technique continued to come crashing down, the martial saint expert's face darkened. He took out a small black umbrella from his storage magic artifact. Then, he hammered his chest with his left hand and immediately spat out a mouthful of blood essence onto the small black umbrella. Oh no! Faling, who had been using his divine sense to observe the peak of the 3rd grade martial saint expert, saw that the umbrella-shaped magic artifact that his opponent had taken out was actually a defensive magic artifact of the middle-grade martial saint realm. His expression changed slightly. Then, he directly used all of his divine sense as an early martial saint to directly destroy the internal structure of the umbrella-shaped magic artifact, without Yu Haoran noticing, causing it to temporarily lose the power of a defensive magic artifact. How is this possible? Seeing that the umbrella-shaped magic artifact had not changed at all, the martial saint expert's face revealed a look of shock. He could not help but question the umbrella-shaped magic artifact. What the hell is going on? Why can't this damn defensive magic artifact be activated? Unfortunately, just as he was questioning the magic artifact that had no response at all, the staff technique that had a power close to the martial saint realm heavily smashed on his body, causing the martial saint expert, who was at the peak of the third-grade martial saint realm, to be directly blown away by the staff technique without even having the chance to let out a scream. Seeing that Yu Haoran had killed the expert at the peak of the third-grade martial saint expert with a single staff strike, Ryu, who had hidden in the secret passage in advance, let out a long sigh of relief. At the same time, she could not help but cheer for Yu Haoran. Too handsome, as expected of the man that I, Ryu, have taken a fancy to. Boom. Landing heavily on the ground, Yu Haoran put away the 9 formation flags that were used to set up the formation. He looked at the martial saint expert who had been completely smashed into minced meat by the staff technique and could not help but let out a sigh of relief. Then, he dispersed the blood essence of the Power King Kong ape, which had been consumed by more than half, and regained his original appearance. At the same time, as his body returned to its original appearance, he unexpectedly found a small black umbrella the size of a palm at the place where the expert at the peak of the third-grade martial saint expert had just been standing. He stretched out his hand and directly sucked the small black umbrella into his hand. Then, he used his mind and Yuanli to carefully feel the small black umbrella. Then, he questioned Thaling in his sea of consciousness. Pagoda spirit, did you secretly help me just now? Looking at the small black umbrella in Yu Haoran's hand, Thaling secretly complained to himself that he had forgotten to destroy the corpse and leave a trace that Yu Haoran had found out about. Yes, the small black umbrella was a defensive magic artifact at the peak of the middle stage of the Sage Realm. With Yu Haoran's knowledge, it was impossible for him to deny it, so Thaling honestly admitted it. Thank you. After getting Thaling's acknowledgement, Yu Haoran not only did not blame him, but also thanked him from the bottom of his heart. Just now, killing the expert at the peak of the third-grade martial saint expert seemed very simple, but in fact, the whole process was very dangerous. With a little bit of carelessness, the result could be changed. Moreover, through the fight with the expert at the peak of the third-grade martial saint expert just now, Yu Haoran found that blocking the martial saint expert's comprehension of the power of law, although there is a certain limit to the strength of the martial saint expert, it did not mean that it was really safe. If the expert at the peak of the third-grade martial saint expert who had been killed just now could immediately calm down when facing the attack of the one staff facing the sky, then with his own strength as a martial saint, even if he could not avoid the attack of the staff technique, he would still have the ability to avoid fatal injuries. Therefore, like today's risky method, he would try to use it less in the future, or not use it at all. After all, no one could guarantee that the next martial saint expert he met would be as inexperienced as the one just now, panicking and not knowing what to do. Ryu, you damn bitch, get the hell out here. The old woman in red quickly rushed to the bedroom and saw that the house had been destroyed beyond recognition. She did not feel the aura of the expert at the third-grade martial saint expert. She immediately stopped the idea of rushing into the bedroom, then stood outside the bedroom and scolded loudly. You're courting death. Originally, Yu Haoran, who had already returned to his original form, had planned to use pills and spirit stones to recover the Yuanli that he had used to perform the one staff facing the sky. However, after hearing the insults of Ryu outside the bedroom, His heart immediately burned with anger, and a strong, murderous aura rose from his body. Ryu, stay in the secret passage and don't come out. Turning his head, Yuhaoran ordered the enemy who was about to leave the secret passage and face the insults just now. Chapter 428. Aolo. After Ryu obediently retreated to the secret passage, Yuhaoran directly activated the second drop of large power gold ape's blood essence. After transforming back into the large power King Kong ape, he let out a furious roar towards the sky. As for the old woman in red standing outside the bedroom, when she heard the angry roar of the large power King Kong ape, her expression changed. Her high-level 8th stage martial king spiritual sense quickly swept across the bedroom, and with a pale face, she immediately turned around and fled. This was because the old woman in red had never thought that not only was Ryu able to control a black bear at the peak of the 8th rank of the 5th step, she also had a large power King Kong ape at the peak of the 7th rank of the 5th step protecting her. At this moment, the old woman in red did not have the urge to take revenge for the cyan-clothed old man and the white-clothed old man, nor did she capture Ryu alive to save the yellow-clothed old man from the black bear's attack. She directly chose a different direction from the yellow-clothed old man, hoping to escape the pursuit of the large power King Kong ape and escape from Mount Xiang. Unfortunately, with the strength of a high-level 8th stage martial king, he could be considered the top expert in the Mount Xiang bandit group. However, facing a large power King Kong ape at the peak of the 7th rank of the 5th step, any thoughts were just wishful thinking. In the end, he was slapped into a meat patty by the giant ape's palm. After easily killing the red-clothed old woman with the highest cultivation and strongest strength, Yuhaoran, who had transformed into a large power King Kong ape, glanced at the 15 bandit leaders who had chased after the red-clothed old woman and immediately turned around to escape. A sinister smile flashed across his face. After that, he directly jumped up from the ground, and like a wolf charging into a flock of sheep, he easily snatched away the bandit leaders whose hands were stained with blood. After Yuhaoran killed the last bandit leader with a single punch, the black bear also took care of its opponent and excitedly returned to the front of the bedroom. Fowling, use your spiritual sense to help me check and see if there are any other Martial King experts in the bandit group. After killing all the leaders of the Mount Xiang bandit group, Yuhaoran did not end the secret technique's transformation. Instead, he planned to use the large power King Kong ape's transformation to eliminate any hidden dangers that threaten his and Ryu's safety. Yes, Fowling's reply, causing Yuhaoran to immediately reveal a fierce gaze. However, Fowling's next sentence made him retract his fierce gaze and end the transformation of the large power King Kong ape. However, when He Xiong easily slaughtered the protectors, envoys, and bandit leaders, those 1st to 3rd grade Martial King bandits had already fled Mount Echo. At this very moment, among the 18 bandits of Xiangshan and the Xiangshan bandit group, the one with the highest cultivation is only a small leader at the peak of the 9th grade martial master. Ryu, come out. Yuhaoran returned to the bedroom that was already in tatters because of his transformation and battle. His face was pale as he took a pill, and then he called out to Ryu, who was in the secret passage. Haoran, are you all right? Seeing Yuhaoran's pale face and sitting cross-legged on the ground, Ryu, whose face was also pale, asked nervously, I'm fine. It's just that the consumption of spirit energy and stamina is rather large. Shaking his head, Yuhaoran gave a simple explanation. He then closed his eyes and began to recover his energy that had fallen to the limit, using the secret transformation technique to transform into an exotic beast. He had already used it back and forth no less than 10 times. His body and spirit energy had long since adapted to the secret transformation technique. However, he had never tried to transform twice in a row. This caused the consumption of his body and spirit energy to exceed the limit that his body could bear. Fortunately, the 2 consecutive transformations only consumed too much stamina and spirit energy. It did not cause any harm to his internal organs and dantian. This allowed him to recover more than half of his energy in just half an hour with the help of medicinal pills. Opening his eyes and looking at Hiruyu, whose face was filled with worry, Yu Haoran smiled. After indicating that he was fine, he stopped cultivating and stood up. "Ryu, how are you recovering now?" Yu Haoran asked with concern as he reached out to grab Hiruyu's shoulder. "With the help of the top medicinal pills you just gave me, my stamina has basically recovered. However, I'm afraid that my soul and spirit energy will need about a day to recover," Hiryu said in a relaxed tone. "That's good." The entire Echo Mountain bandits, as well as all the martial grandmasters and martial king experts in the 18 bandit groups, had already fled Echo Mountain, except for the few high-level martial sages who were secretly cultivating at the bottom of Echo Mountain. Thowling had discovered with his divine thought there was no hidden danger in the entire Echo Mountain range that could threaten their safety. Therefore, it did not matter to Yu Haoran whether Hiryu recovered her soul and spirit energy a day earlier or later. "Black Bear, come here," Yu Haoran ordered as he waved to Black Bear, standing not far away. "Keep your body size at 5 meters. Ryu, where is the treasure house of your Echo Mountain bandits?" Yu Haoran asked as he reached out to grab Hiruyu's small waist and jumped on a Black Bear's back with her. "Haoran, the location of the treasure house is behind this mountain peak." Being tightly hugged by Yu Haoran, apart from feeling shy at the beginning, Hiruyu actually liked the feeling of being hugged. She leaned her head on Yu Haoran's shoulder as she introduced the location of the treasure house. Suddenly, Hirubeo thought of the way to open the treasure house and quickly asked, "Haoran, the green, white, red, and yellow guardians each have a jade pendant engraved with different divine beasts. Those 4 jade pendants are the 4 keys to open the treasure house. Black Bear, quickly take me to the place where we killed that group of martial king experts." After hearing Hiruyu's reminder, Yu Haoran's expression could not help but change. Whether it was Black Bear or him who had transformed into a large power King Kong ape, their favorite attack method was to forcefully smash their opponents into a meat patty. He was worried that when he killed the old woman in red and the old man in yellow that Black Bear killed, they would also destroy the jade pendant that opened the treasure house. Fortunately, when they arrived at the place where Black Bear had massacred the martial king experts of the Echo Mountain bandits, they found 3 gray storage bags on the bodies of the 2 old men in green and white, as well as the old man in yellow who had been smashed into a meat patty. Yu Haoran asked the tower spirit to use its divine sense to erase the mark of the original owner of the storage bag. In addition to the jade pendant mentioned by Hiruyu, Yu Haoran also found a large number of spirit stones, pills, and spirit herbs, as well as some refining materials that even the tower spirit was excited about. Just the storage bag that they carried with them contained such precious treasures. Then, how many rare treasures were stored in the treasure house that the Echo Mountain bandits had accumulated over hundreds of years? When they rushed to the treasure house at the back of the mountain, Yu Haoran took the opportunity to take the storage bag from the old woman in red and found the 4th jade pendant. Then, he handed the 4 jade pendants to Hiruyu. The environment at the front and back of the mountain, where the Echo Mountain bandits were stationed, did not change much. The only difference was that there were fewer trees at the back of the mountain and more strangely shaped rocks. Under Hiruyu's guidance, they quickly arrived in front of a rock that was shaped like a wolf's head. Gesturing for Yu Haoran to send her off the back of Black Bear, Hiryu took out a jade pendant with a wolf's head engraved on it from her storage ring. Then, she placed the 5 jade pendants into the 5 orifices of the wolf's head rock. As the 5 jade pendants were swallowed by the wolf's head, the wolf's originally tightly shut mouth slowly opened, revealing a passage that could accommodate 2 to 3 people at the same time. "Haoran, let's go." Turning her head to remind Yu Haoran, Hiryu stepped into the passage. Gesturing for Black Bear to shrink its body, Yu Haoran quickly chased after her and reached out to support Hiruyu's arm. Chapter 429. Looking at the green bronze door in front of her, Hiryu took a deep breath and then turned her head to introduce it to you, Howren. Howren, the treasure vault of the Rumbling Mountain Bandits is different from the traditional treasure vaults that you know, because if you want to enter which level of the treasure vault, then you have to pay the corresponding grade of spirit stones. Speaking of this, Hiryu took out a 7th level 9th grade spirit stone, 2 8th level 9th grade spirit stones, for 9th level 9th grade spirit stones, and 8 10th level 9th grade spirit stones from her storage ring. At the same time, she also introduced in detail the different grades and different amounts of spirit stones that corresponded to the different levels of the treasure vault. For example, if you want to enter the 4th level of the treasure vault, then you need to prepare 15 spirit stones of different grades like Hiryu just did. Among these 15 spirit stones, the 7th level 9th grade spirit stones corresponded to opening the 4th level of the treasure vault. The 8th level 9th grade spirit stones corresponded to opening the 3rd level of the treasure vault. The 9th level 9th grade spirit stones corresponded to opening the 2nd level of the treasure vault. And the 10th level 9th grade spirit stones corresponded to opening the 1st level of the treasure vault. If you want to open a higher level of the treasure vault, then not only do you need to prepare higher grade spirit stones, but you also need to double the amount of spirit stones of different grades. You, Howren, this treasure vault is not simple. Its origin is very mysterious. Hearing Hiryu just introduce the special method of opening the treasure vault, it immediately aroused a strong interest in Thaling. He immediately used his divine thought to check it, but found that his divine thought could not penetrate the green bronze door at all. He could not help but sigh. That's right. Nodding his head in agreement, Howren also had a strong interest in the treasure vault in front of him. After all, this method of opening the treasure vault was a strange method that he had never seen or heard of in his previous life. However, when he saw that Hiryu was about to place the 15 spirit stones she had just taken out onto the over 1,000 indentations on the azure bronze door, he hurriedly spoke out to stop her. Ryu, don't you have any higher grade spirit stones in your hands? 7th or 9th grade spirit stones could only open the 4th floor of the treasury. This made Howren feel that Hiryu was a little too stingy. To be precise, the great leader of the Echo Mountain Bandits, an expert who was about to break through to the martial emperor realm, could it be that the highest grade of spiritual stones he had stored was only the 9th grade of the 7th grade? Howren, the situation of our Mount Echo Bandits is a bit special. Regardless of whether it is me, the leader, the 4 great protectors, or the 7 great emissaries, we are absolutely not allowed to have spirit stones that exceed rank 7 or above. Hearing the doubt in Howren's tone, Hiryu's expression was somewhat hesitant as she replied. Ryu, say no more. Seeing the hesitation that flashed across Hiryu's face, he immediately knew that the grade of the spirit stones was definitely related to the interests of the forces behind it. It was possible that it would trigger a backlash from the rules of heaven. So he quickly motioned for her to stop talking. Subsequently, Howren took out a 4th grade 9th grade spirit stone, 2 5th grade 9th grade spirit stones, for 6th grade 9th grade spirit stones, 8 7th grade 9th grade spirit stones, 16 8th grade 9th grade spirit stones, 39th grade 9th grade spirit stones, and 64 10th grade 9th grade spirit stones from the storage ring. Howren, how could you have a 4th grade spirit stone? Moreover, it is a 4th grade 9th grade spirit stone. Seeing the 129 spirit stones that Howren took out, Hiryu's gaze was immediately stunned by the largest spirit stone among the spirit stones. It had a crystal-like luster and did not have a trace of spiritual chi leaking from it. The spiritual chi was restrained without a trace of leakage. This was a unique characteristic of 4th grade, high grade spirit stones and above. However, 4th grade high grade spirit stones and above could not be possessed by experts who were at least in the sage realm or above. Only the monstrous geniuses of the top sex could possess them. But Howren, although he had the secret transformation technique and could display the strength of a martial emperor, he was only a 5th grade martial master. Moreover, he came from a small second-rate sect, the 100 Chi Gate. So, where did he obtain a 4th grade spirit stone, and one that was at the peak of the 4th grade 9th grade spirit stone? What shocked Hiryu even more was the calmness when he took out the spirit stone. The number of fourth-grade spirit stones in his storage ring was definitely not the same as the one he had just taken out. Some time ago, the 100 Chi Gate and a few affiliated sects joined forces to open a secret realm. These spirit stones were obtained from the secret realm. Yu Haoran casually explained as he pushed the 127 spirit stones in front of Hiryu. They were obtained from the secret realm. Yu Haoran's understated explanation did not weaken the shock in Hiryu's heart. However, she knew that this kind of thing was definitely related to Yu Haoran's secret. Unless he was willing to take the initiative to tell you, if she asked too much, it would arouse his disgust. Therefore, Hiryu forcibly suppressed the shock in her heart and put the 127 spirit stones in different indentations on the bronze door according to their grades and numbers. As the spiritual chi in the 127 spirit stones of different grades began to be absorbed by the bronze door, the closed bronze door slowly opened. When the bronze door was completely opened, Hiryu nodded to Yu Haoran and then stepped into the treasure house. Haoran, every time the treasure house is opened, a certain number of spirit stones will be consumed. Moreover, it requires the presence of the 4 guardians and me. Therefore, according to the usual practice of our Mount Echo bandits, the 4 guardians and I will open the treasure house at the same time when the treasure house has accumulated to a certain amount. Then, according to the different types and values, we will store them in different levels of the treasure house. As she stepped into the treasure house, Hiryu explained, "However, due to the limitations of special circumstances, the spirit stones I have are only of the 7th grade and 9th grade. Therefore, I have only entered the first 4 levels of the treasure house. As for how many levels there are in the whole treasure house, I'm not very clear. I also don't know what kind of treasures are stored in the treasure house after the 4th level. It's okay. Anyway, the spirit stones we just used are of the 4th grade and 9th grade. According to the way you just said to open the treasure house, we can go straight to the 7th level of the treasure house. At that time, we can probably guess the real number of levels of the treasure house, as well as the type and number of treasures after the 4th level." Yu Haoran waved his hand and explained, "That's true." After hearing Yu Haoran's explanation, Hiryu nodded. Just as Yu Haoran and Hiryu stepped into the first level of the treasure house, they immediately felt a trace of something wrong. Although the spiritual chi of heaven and earth on the first level of the treasure house was very dense, even close to the level of vaporization, among the dense spiritual chi, there's a kind of pure spiritual chi unique to high-quality spirit stones. This situation was exactly the same as what Yu Haoran encountered on the first level of the treasure house on the 100 feet peak a few days ago. This also meant that the high-quality spirit stones on the first level of the treasure house had been taken away. Although the secret skill of life and death on a thin line caused Hiryu to temporarily be unable to use her divine thought, as the leader of the Mount Echo bandits who could enter and leave the treasure house, she had a very deep impression of the placement, quantity, and quality of the spirit stones on the first level of the treasure house. Moreover, it had only been half a month since she last stored the resources and treasures. During this period, she and the 4 protectors had not entered the treasure house. So, where on earth did the spirit stones of the 6th level and above in the entire treasure house go? Ryu, have you encountered such a situation before? Seeing that Hiryu's face also revealed a look of surprise, Yu Haoran suddenly felt that something was wrong, so he quickly asked, Chapter 430. In the treasure house of the Echo Mountain Range. Never, because according to our agreement with the force behind us, the force behind us will come to check the treasure house every year on the 3rd day of March. There is still more than 2 months before the 3rd day of March. It is not the time to hand over the treasures. Hiryu frowned and replied, Ryu, let's not touch these spirit stones for the time being. Let's go to the 2nd floor of the treasure house to have a look. Since it was not the day of the handover, Hiryu did not use the jade pendant to enter the treasure house. Then, the current situation could only explain 2 problems. Either someone had a full set of keys to open the door of the treasure house, or there was a problem with the treasure house itself. As for which problem, they could only continue to go deeper into the treasure house to check. Okay. Nodding, Ryu quickly took Howard to the deepest part of the first floor of the treasure house, in front of a green light curtain about 3 meters high and 2 meters wide. Howard, this green light curtain is the door to the second floor of the treasure house. Pointing to the green light curtain in front of them, Ryu explained, only when the green bronze door is opened and the spirit stones are used to open the second floor of the treasure house, this green light curtain will appear. Otherwise, it will not appear, and you will not be able to find the passage to the second floor. Nodding, Howard indicated that he understood, and then followed Ryu through the green light curtain and entered the second floor of the treasure house. Very similar to the decoration of the traditional treasure house, the second floor of the treasure house of the Echo Mountain Bandits also stored precious spirit medicine and countless medicinal herbs. Unlike spirit stones, the quality of spirit stones could be roughly determined by the concentration and purity of the spirit chi emitted. Spirit medicine and medicinal herbs needed to be distinguished by the naked eye and rich experience to determine its origin, age, and effect. Therefore, to know whether the grade of these medicinal herbs and spirit medicine was the same as the spirit stones on the first floor of the treasure house, lacking the most precious and top spirit medicine and medicinal herbs, further investigation was needed. 1,300 sets of raindrop flower, grade 1 of the 8th level. 1,500 years old, grade 2 of the 8th level, containing a huge poison, baby grass. 1,100 years old, grade 7 of the 8th level, mysterious ginseng grass, which can directly improve cultivation. There is no need for him to get close to observe them. Relying on his cultivation and knowledge in the Tao of alchemy, he was able to know the specific age, grade, and effects of each medicinal herb and spirit medicine just by observing and smelling them. However, Howard couldn't help but frown after observing more than 30 medicinal herbs piled together. Ryu, you're in charge of arranging these medicinal herbs. Howard asked somewhat angrily as he pointed at the dozens of medicinal herbs that were casually piled up on the nearest wooden shelf. No. Looking at Howard's frown and the anger in his voice, Ryu quickly explained, even though she didn't know what had happened to make him so angry. Howard, as I'm not proficient in the art of alchemy and know very little about identifying medicinal ingredients, the storage and organization of the medicinal ingredients on the second level of the treasury has always been personally handled by Protector Hua, who is proficient in the art of alchemy. After explaining, Ryu looked at the pile of herbs that Howard had pointed out and asked in confusion, Howard, are these herbs stored in the wrong place? Yes. Nodding his head, Howard picked out a spirit medicine that was very similar to a 3- or 4-year-old child medicine from the pile of herbs, and explained, this is a grade 8, grade 2 child medicine that contains a huge amount of poison. The poison it contains can harm the internal organs of a peak 9th grade Marshall King expert. This is a root ginseng that can directly increase one's cultivation to grade 8, grade 7. When two medicinal herbs of completely different attributes are placed together, it will cause the poison and spirituality to fuse together. In the end, not only will it destroy the two medicinal herbs that can be considered as relatively precious. Furthermore, if one directly uses the root ginseng to increase one's cultivation without knowing, it will ultimately cause the internal organs to be poisoned because the root ginseng's energy is mixed with the child medicine's poison. If it's light, one's cultivation will drop. If it's heavy, one will directly die. It's that serious. After hearing Howard's explanation, Ryu's expression couldn't help but change. Because the faction behind her only cared about precious medicinal herbs of grade 6 and above. After every year's handover, she and the 4 protectors would sort out a portion of the precious medicinal herbs and reward them to their subordinates who had done meritorious service. If, because they didn't store the medicinal herbs properly, they harmed their subordinates who had done meritorious service, not only would it affect their own reputation, It would also harm their loyal subordinates. Damned old bitch. Thinking of this, Hiryu couldn't help but curse. But immediately after, she remembered that the person she liked was right beside her and wondered if her cursing just now would make him angry. She hurriedly covered her mouth and looked up, only to discover that Yu Haoran's gaze was once again focused on the medicinal herbs. Different from the first floor of the treasury, Yu Haoran's process of inspection was that as long as he found medicinal herb that was relatively precious or useful to him, he would directly put it away. After observing for nearly 3 hours and inspecting no less than 10,000 medicinal herbs, Yu Haoran returned to Hiryu's side and said gloomily, "It's exactly the same as the first floor of the treasury. All the medicinal herbs of grade 6 and above are gone. Let's go to the third floor." The situation of the first and second floors was exactly the same. Hiryu immediately wanted to go to the third floor of the treasury to take a look and see if the situation inside was the same as the first 2 floors. Okay, nodding his head, Yu Haoran followed Hiryu directly through the green light curtain to the third floor of the treasury. After stepping into the third floor of the treasury, Yu Haoran discovered that the storage of the treasures on the third floor was somewhat different from the traditional treasury. This was because the treasury on the third floor of the Xiangshan Bandits gang was divided into 3 areas. On the more than 10 shelves in the eastern area, there were nearly 1,000 books of mental cultivation methods and martial skills, as well as more than 30 white jade slips. In the western area, there were all kinds of refining materials that numbered more than 100. On the more than 10 shelves in the middle area, there were thousands of pill bottles filled with medicinal pills. Pointing at the different treasures placed in different areas in front of him, Yu Haoran couldn't help but ask angrily, "Ryu, who told you to store them like this?" "It's the request of the force behind us." Hiryu sighed helplessly as she replied. Hearing that it was the force behind Hiryu that requested this, Yu Haoran could only shake his head and take the lead to the area where the medicinal pills were placed. Although the way the treasures were stored on the third floor of the treasury was wrong, Hiryu and the others were still the same as the traditional treasury in some places. That was, at the bottom of each pill bottle, the name, grade, and effect of the medicinal pills in the pill bottle were marked in detail. His gaze swept through these pill bottles one by one. Yu Haoran's gaze stopped in front of a pill bottle marked with a rank 6 first grade soul condensing pill. Reaching out to pick up the pill bottle placed on the wooden shelf, Yu Haoran suddenly felt that something was not right. Because the pill bottle in his hand was too light, it was like an empty pill bottle. Without any hesitation, he hurriedly opened the pill bottle. A very light pill chi of the soul condensing pill let him know that the medicinal pills in the pill bottle had not been taken for a long time. Putting the pill bottle back on the wooden shelf again, Yu Haoran sped up his footsteps and specifically searched for the bottom of the pill bottle. All the pill bottles marked rank 6 and above, but the final result was that all of them were empty. Chapter 431. Echoing Mountain Range, Treasure Vault. The higher the grade of mental cultivation method and martial skill, the less paper or animal skin was used to record and pass down. Most of the time, jade slips that had been stored for a longer period of time and were more secure were used. In his previous life, when he poisoned the illegitimate son of the Yushu Temple's Grand Palace Master, he accidentally obtained the Great Mystery Heart Sutra cultivation method, which was passed down in the form of jade slips. Therefore, after appearing in the area where martial skills and mental cultivation method were passed down, Yu Haoran went directly to the place where the jade slips were stored, and then used his mind to read the contents of the jade slips. There were not many jade slips, only 32 of them. In just a few minutes, Yu Haoran had already checked the contents of all the jade slips and found that the jade slips did not store any martial skills or mental cultivation method, nor were they any special secret methods. Instead, they were letters between the forces behind the Echoing Mountain Bandits and each leader and the 4 protectors. Through the contents recorded in the 32 jade slips, He had basically understood the intricate and complicated interests behind the echoing mountain bandits. He also felt very regretful that the 100 Chi gate did not get involved in it in advance. After putting away the 32 jade slips, Yu Haoran stood in place and waited for a while. Yu Haoran, there are many good things in the area where the refining materials are stored. I have secretly put them away. Until the thowling voice came from the sea of consciousness, Yu Haoran turned around and returned to He Ruyu's side. How is it? Looking at Yu Haoran, He Ruyu asked. The situation in the elixir area is exactly the same as the first 2 floors of the treasure vault. However, I already have an idea in my heart, but whether it is true or not, I still need to enter the 4th floor of the treasure vault to further verify it. Turning his head to look at the place where the elixir bottles were stored, Yu Haoran nodded, and then motioned He Ruyu to go directly to the 4th floor of the treasure vault. After entering the 4th floor through the green light curtain, Yu Haoran found that the 4th floor of the treasure vault was filled with all kinds of magic tools and treasures of different shapes and types. Haoran, the treasures on this floor don't seem to be missing. In the first 4 floors of the treasury, He Ruyu was mainly in charge of the spirit stones on the 1st floor, as well as the top treasures and magic tools on the 4th floor. Moreover, compared to the huge amount of treasures on the first 3 floors, there were very few treasures and magic tools on the 4th floor. There were only 26 of them. Therefore, He Ryu only needed a glance to determine whether the treasures were missing. Are you sure? Yu Haoran asked as he turned to look at He Ryu. I'm sure. He Ryu nodded heavily and promised. Yu Haoran appeared in front of a jade box in a flash. Then he stretched out his hand and opened the jade box. He then gestured to He Ryu. Ryu, what was originally stored in this jade box? How is this possible? Looking at the empty jade box, He Ryu said in disbelief. Haoran, originally, the jade box contained a lump of profound origin liquid that could directly increase one's cultivation and strength, as well as have a certain chance of comprehending the power of laws. However, due to the volatility of the profound yuan liquid itself, it cannot leave the jade box for a long period of time. Otherwise, the energy contained within the profound yuan liquid would gradually weaken until it finally disappears. That's right. Hearing He Ruyu's explanation, Yu Haoran nodded and became even more certain of his conjecture. Then, he looked up at the treasures on the 4th floor of the treasury and found 3 more jade boxes and 2 wooden boxes made of evergreen wood. Pulling He Ruyu's hand, Yu Haoran went directly to the jade and wooden boxes. He opened them one by one, except for a wooden box containing a jade pendant carved with a blue dragon. The treasures in the other 4 boxes had all disappeared. According to He Ryu, the missing treasures were all top-notch treasures that could be used to increase one's cultivation and strength. They contained a large amount of spiritual energy. At this moment, Yu Haoran not only guessed the real reason for the disappearance of the 6th-level spirit stones and pills, as well as the treasures containing a large amount of spiritual energy, but he also roughly knew how many floors there were in the treasury and what kind of treasures were stored in the treasury after the 4th floor. Thinking that the treasures stored in the treasury after the 4th floor were all life-threatening, Yu Haoran did not take the risk of immediately entering the 5th floor of the treasury. Instead, he carefully examined the remaining 10 or so treasures on the 4th floor. However, at this moment, the thowling in his sea of consciousness suddenly asked for the jade pendant he had just found. Yu Haoran, send the jade pendant you found in the wooden box to the victor. Communicating with the victor in his mind, Yu Haoran directly sent the jade pendant carved with a blue dragon into the victor. When he had received the jade pendant, he had already used his mind and Yuan Li to examine it and did not discover any secrets. Therefore, even if the thowling did not take the initiative to ask for it, after examining all the treasures, he would have taken the initiative to ask the thowling to help him examine it. After giving the jade pendant to the thowling, Yu Haoran's gaze turned to the remaining 10 or so treasures. There was a simple and unadorned pill furnace with 2 slightly damaged ends. Slowly walking to the pill furnace, he carefully examined the engravings on the surface of the pill furnace: a flower, a grass, a tree, a bug, and a person. At the same time, his mind also recalled that he had seen records of this pill furnace in a certain historical site in his previous life. Exactly the same, regardless of whether it was the content of the engravings, the shape, the size, or the position of the engravings, they were all exactly the same as in the records. Yu Haoran was already 50% confident in his heart. Placing his hand on the pill furnace, he mobilized the Yuan Li in his dantian and injected it into the pill furnace. The green flame that had been lying quietly in the pill furnace immediately began to burn. Stretching his free right hand into the pill furnace, he carefully felt the temperature of the green flame. Discovering that it was exactly the same as in the records, his confidence instantly increased to 70%. From the storage ring, he took out an ordinary 9th-level spiritual medicine and threw it directly into the pill furnace. Then he increased the input of Yuan Li. The green flame that originally did not cause any harm to his hand, in less than 3 seconds, refined the spiritual medicine that he had just thrown into the pill furnace into a ball of spiritual liquid the size of a fingernail. Sucking out the spiritual liquid and carefully observing it, Yu Haoran was pleasantly surprised to discover that using the green flame to refine the spiritual medicine, not only was the refining speed faster, but the purity of the spiritual liquid after refining was basically close to perfection. At this moment, he was completely confident that this pill furnace was the life pill furnace of the Saint Fan Miaozuan from 30,000 years ago. However, from the extent of the damage to the pill furnace and the fact that he had used Yuan Li to drive it, this pill furnace had once suffered unimaginable damage. Not only had it caused the pill furnace's grade to drop to the Saint low level, but the tool spirit of the pill furnace had also been completely destroyed. Although losing the tool spirit was equivalent to losing the inheritance of Saint Fan Miaozuan in alchemy, Yu Haoran did not feel too much regret in his heart. Because of his passionate, adventurous experience in his previous life, he had more than once come into contact with the inheritance and records of alchemy that were not inferior to or even superior to Saint Fan Miaozuan's. In terms of alchemy, Yu Haoran was confident that he would not lose to Saint Fan Miaozuan. If the tool spirit of the pill furnace still existed, it was very likely that it would affect his use of the pill furnace. To completely refine a Saint low-level pill furnace, he had to use the power of his soul. Now that his cultivation had not broken through to the martial ancestor realm, he could only temporarily put away the pill furnace. Then, his gaze turned to the other treasures. However, after sweeping his gaze over the remaining dozen treasures, Yu Haoran discovered that most of these treasures were only martial ancestor realm and were not of much use to him. But considering that the Qingyun faction and eldest senior brother had just ascended to the throne of the sect master, they needed these treasures to win people's hearts. After asking for He Ruyu's permission, Yu Haoran directly put them into his storage ring. Chapter 432. In the treasure house of the Echo Mountain Range. Ruyu, go back to the first level of the treasure house and use the dense spiritual chi of heaven and earth on the first level, as well as the top elixir I gave you to speed up the recovery of the side effects of the secret skill. After careful consideration, Yu Haoran finally decided not to take Ruyu to the 5th level of the treasure house. After all, what was going on the 5th level of the treasure house was just his guess. If his guess was wrong, it would be fine. At most, he would go back again and continue to explore the 5th level with Hiruyu. But if his guess was right, he would not be able to take care of Hiruyu if they fought in the end. Why? Hiruyu asked with dissatisfaction. Because there are no precious treasures on the 5th level of the treasure house. Instead, there's a certain danger. Knowing that Hiruyu would question him, Yu Haoran could only tell the truth and even use some hurtful methods to refuse Hiruyu. If you enter the 5th level of the treasure house in your current state, not only will you not be able to help me, but you will also drag me down and may even put me in fatal danger. No, Yu Haoran's refusal sounded a little hurtful. After all, she could not use her divine soul and Yuanli now, because Yu Haoran asked her to use the secret skill of life and death on a thin line. But how could he Ryu let Yu Haoran enter the 5th level of the treasure house alone? Haoran, with the elixir you gave me and the treatment during this period, I will be able to completely recover in 2 to 3 hours at most. At that time, I will accompany you to the 5th level of the treasure house. He Ryu ordered without hesitation. Alas, with a sigh, Yu Haoran walked directly to He Ryu. He nodded helplessly and reached out to touch her hair. When she lowered her head because of shyness, Yu Haoran's finger directly hit her sleep acupuncture point. Yu Haoran, you. He Ryu glared at Yu Haoran with eyes full of anger. Then, she closed her eyes and fainted. Reaching out to hold He Ryu, who was about to fall, Yu Haoran took out a pill from his storage ring that could help her sleep and nourish her soul through sleep. Then, he helped her take it. Yu Haoran, what are you doing? Seeing that Yu Haoran not only took the initiative to knock out He Ryu, but also helped her to take the pill that could increase her sleep, Thowling asked in puzzlement. Because I don't want her to take any risks. Yu Haoran took out a few clothes from his storage ring, stacked them together, and spread them on the ground. Then, he placed He Ryu on top of the clothes so that she could sleep more comfortably. Take a risk. After hearing Yu Haoran's promotion, Thowling repeated the sentence and asked in confusion. Yu Haoran, this is the first time you've entered this mysterious treasure house. How do you know that there are dangers on the 5th floor of the treasure house? Thowling, do you remember that in Ryu's bedroom, you once told me that you found a few high-level martial sage experts who were cultivating in seclusion under the Echo Mountain range? Yu Haoran did not immediately answer Thowling's question and asked instead. Of course I remember, Thowling replied. After all, the way those martial sage experts cultivated in seclusion was very similar to a certain forbidden method in the legends. He wanted to further confirm the authenticity and see if he could use this method to help Yu Haoran improve his cultivation and strength. Thowling, can you recall the number of martial sage experts who were cultivating in seclusion under the Echo Mountain range? Yu Haoran asked. Let me think. When Thowling discovered the martial sage experts who were cultivating in seclusion under the Echo Mountain range, he did not dare to observe too much for fear of waking them up. Therefore, in the face of Yu Haoran's interrogation, he carefully recalled and finally confirmed his answer. I think there were 5 of them. Thowling, can you recall the cultivation of these 5 martial sage experts in detail? Yu Haoran continued to ask. The Tower Genie replied in an uncertain tone after recalling for a moment. The lowest cultivation was at the peak of the 6th grade martial sage. The highest cultivation was at the peak of the 9th grade martial honorable realm and was about to break through to the martial honorable realm. As for the cultivation of the other 3, I did not observe carefully and could not confirm their true cultivation. Thowling, then let me tell you the true cultivation of those 5 people. Although Thowling's tone was uncertain, Yu Haoran said with certainty. 1 was at the peak of the 6th grade martial sage. 1 was at the peak of the 7th grade martial sage. 1 was at the peak of the 8th grade martial sage. 1 was at the peak of the 9th grade martial sage and was about to break through to the martial honorable realm. Yu Haoran, how do you know all this? Hearing the certainty in Yu Haoran's tone, Thowling asked in confusion. As for how I know all this, you will be able to guess all this when I enter the 5th level of the Echo Mountain range. Still not answering Thowling's question, Yu Haoran instructed Black Bear. Black Bear, I will leave Ryu in your care from now on. If I am still not back when she wakes up, you must not let her enter the 5th level of the Echo Mountain range, even if you have to use force. Master, I understand. Nodding, Black Bear wanted to walk to He Ryu's side, but Yu Haoran raised his hand and gestured for Black Bear to continue to listen. Also, go to the 1st level of the Echo Mountain range and bring all the spirit stones to the 4th level. Then, with the help of those spirit stones, see if you can break through the bottleneck of the 8th grade martial sage and advance to the 9th grade martial sage. Yes, Master. Black Bear replied excitedly. Actually, Black Bear could not be blamed for being so excited. Based on his current accumulation, It would not be a problem for him to advance to the peak of the ninth grade martial sage, let alone break through to the ninth grade martial sage. The only thing he lacked was a huge amount of energy. Although there were no high-level spirit stones stored in the first level of the Echo Mountain range, there were hundreds of thousands of spirit stones below the 6th grade. Not only would it be able to help him break through to the ninth grade martial sage, he might even be able to advance to the peak of the ninth grade martial sage. Therefore, after accepting the order, Black Bear immediately turned and rushed towards the green light screen that led to the 3rd level of the Echo Mountain range. Thaling, be alert and deal with any danger that may appear at any time, Yu Howard exhorted as he stepped into the 5th level of the Echo Mountain range. Don't worry, I'm already prepared, Thaling replied. After crossing the green light screen and entering the 5th level of the Echo Mountain range, Yu Howard was immediately surprised to find that he seemed to have returned to the Blue Moon secret realm in the spirit fog created by the upper 5th grade martial sage. Why is he here? Just as Yu Howard was carefully feeling the purity of the spirit fog in the 5th level of the Echo Mountain range to see if it could be compared with the spirit fog created by the upper 5th grade martial sage in the Blue Moon secret realm, Thaling's shocked voice came from his sea of consciousness. Thaling, did you find the expert at the peak of the 6th grade martial sage in the Echo Mountain range? Facing Thaling's shocked reaction, Yu Howard directly asked. That's right. Nodding his head, Thaling replied. At the same time, he suddenly remembered a question that Yu Howard had mentioned before entering the 5th level of the Echo Mountain range. That was, after he entered the 5th level of the Echo Mountain range, he would be able to guess how he knew the true cultivation of the 5 martial sage experts in the Echo Mountain range in advance. At this moment, seeing the expert at the peak of the 6th grade martial sage sitting cross-legged in the center of the 5th level of the Echo Mountain range, how could Thaling not guess the relationship between them? Yu Howard, could it be that this mysterious Echo Mountain range has a total of 9 levels? From the 5th level onwards, there is a martial sage expert in each level of the Echo Mountain range. That's right. Chapter 433. I gave my daughter a heads up in the morning, so the first chapter was updated a little late. Sorry. Echo Mountain Range, 5th floor of the treasure house. Yu Howard, a little to the left. Because the spiritual fog in front of him was too thick, Yu Howard could not use his sight to determine the specific direction. He could only rely on his own senses and Thaling's spiritual sense to guide him. Following the guidance of Thaling's spiritual sense, Yu Howard deviated a little to the left and continued to go deeper into the treasure house. After going deeper into the treasure house for more than 10 minutes, Yu Howard suddenly stopped and frowned as he said to Thaling in his sea of consciousness, Thaling, something is wrong. Although there were many treasures stored in the first 4 floors of the treasure house, the space of the treasure house was actually not big. Even if they walked around the entire treasure house, it would take at most 5 or 6 minutes. But just now, they had gone deeper into the treasure house for more than 10 minutes and walked for about 7 or 8 miles. Until now, they still had not reached the central area of the treasure house, which was the place where the peak 6th grade martial saint expert was cultivating. How could Yu Howard not feel strange? Thaling, whose spiritual sense was also affected by the spiritual fog, did not realize this problem until he heard Yu Howard's reminder. He also felt that something was wrong. It hurriedly used its divine sense to carefully observe the position of the martial saint expert. The pagoda spirit was shocked to discover that when they went deeper, it seemed as if they were going in circles. The distance between them and the martial saint expert did not decrease at all. Could it be that there was a formation in the treasure house's 5th floor? His spiritual sense scanned the treasure house's 5th floor and did not miss a single place. But in the end, he did not find any trace of a formation. Based on the formation's energy, which was not inferior to the level of refining, Thaling believed that the strange thing just now was not because of the formation. Since it was not because of the formation, why couldn't it accept the martial saint expert who was not too far away? After hearing the strange situation that Thowling found with his spiritual sense, Yu Haoran's originally frowned brows relaxed. Then, he turned around and went back the way he came. At the same time, he was back in front of the green light screen. Without the slightest hesitation, Yu Haoran directly stepped through the green light curtain and returned to the 4th floor of the treasury. "Master, you're back." When the black bear saw Yu Haoran walk out of the green light curtain, it quickly stopped absorbing the spiritual energy and asked for instructions. It was in the middle of absorbing the spiritual energy. "It's fine. You can continue to absorb spiritual energy to improve your cultivation." After instructing He Xiong, Yu Haoran returned to the 5th floor of the treasury through the green light curtain. "Thowling, your earlier conjecture was correct. The reason why we are unable to approach the martial saint expert is not because of the formation in the treasury," Yu Haoran said confidently as he looked at the dense spiritual fog before him. "Yu Haoran, if it's not because of the formation, then what's the reason why we can't get close to the martial saint expert?" Seeing that Yu Haoran had regained his confidence, Thowling hurriedly asked, "I suspect." At this point, Yu Haoran hesitated for a moment. Then, he waved his hand to disperse the spiritual poison in front of him and said, "Thowling, I suspect that the real reason why we can't get close to the peak of the 6th grade martial saint expert might be related to the power of law that he has comprehended." "Impossible." After hearing Yu Haoran's conjecture, Thowling did not even think and directly denied it. "Yu Haoran, in your previous life, you did not comprehend the power of law, and your cultivation did not break through the martial saint realm. Therefore, you don't know the limitations of the power of law that a martial saint expert can use. Not to mention a mere 6th grade martial saint who has comprehended the power of law. Even a martial honorable expert who has mastered the power of law cannot use the power of law for a long time. Thowling, what if it's in a special state?" Faced with Thowling's rebuttal, Yu Haoran did not object and only asked, "A special state," Thowling muttered. Then, he recalled the effect of the forbidden formation on a martial saint expert. In the end, he shook his head and continued to refute. "I don't remember under what state a martial saint expert can use the power of law for a long time. What if it's in a situation where the physical body is sealed and the soul is out of the body?" Yu Haoran said with a cold smile. "Yu Haoran, you're talking about the demon sealing curse, one of the 10 great forbidden techniques of the demonic path." After hearing Yu Haoran mention a state, Thowling immediately thought of the origin of this state and could not help but exclaim. The demon sealing curse was the same as the grafting demonic technique that Gao Wamping of the Law Enforcement Peak had used on Ouyang Haoyu. It was one of the 10 great forbidden techniques of the demonic path. In other words, it was one of the 10 great forbidden techniques of the demonic path. However, the grafting demonic technique was only ranked 9th among the 10 great forbidden techniques of the demonic path. On the other hand, the demon sealing curse was ranked 3rd among the 10 great forbidden techniques. The difference in power and effect between the two could be imagined. That's right. The 6th grade martial saint expert in front of us should be under the demon sealing curse. Otherwise, who can guarantee that they can continuously use the power of law for months, years, or even decades? Nodding his head, Yu Haoran raised his head and looked into the depths of the treasury. His tone was complicated as he sighed. It seems that it won't be long before the great Emperor Qin Kingdom has another peerless expert of the martial saint realm. Since he already knew the basic situation of the last 5 floors of the treasury, the demon sealing curse had no effect on Yu Haoran. If he continued to take the risk to approach the 6th grade martial saint expert, the gains would not make up for the losses. Therefore, Thowling wanted to know what Yu Haoran planned to do next. "Yu Haoran, what do you plan to do next?" "It's very simple. Use the dense spirit fog in front of me and try to break through to the 6th grade martial master in the shortest time possible. Then, return to the 100 Chi gate." Yu Haoran calmly replied. "Okay." After hearing Yu Haoran's plan, Thowling secretly let out a sigh of relief. This was because he was afraid that Howard didn't know the severity of the situation and insisted on approaching the 6th grade martial saint expert at the center of the treasury. What if he woke up the peerless expert of the 9th floor who could break through to the martial saint realm at any time? Unless Howard hid in the victor for his entire life, it would be impossible for him to escape from the pursuit of that peerless expert. He didn't know how long the spirit fog had been accumulated. Whether it was the quantity or the quality, it could easily satisfy the energy needed to break through to the 6th grade martial master realm. Moreover, if it wasn't for Huang Zhonghua's disturbance at the 100 Chi peak, his cultivation would have already broken through to the peak of the 5th grade martial master realm. Therefore, Howard directly sat cross-legged in front of the azure light screen and began to circulate the Great Mystery Heart Sutra. He forcefully absorbed the pure spirit fog and increased his cultivation. As strands of pure spiritual mist were forcibly absorbed by the Supreme Mysterious Heart Sutra, Xiao Chun, who had already reached the point of breaking through his limits, easily broke through the bottleneck and smoothly entered the peak of Grade 5 Martial Master. Chapter 434. Echo Mountain Range, 5th floor of the Treasury. When Howard broke through to the peak of the 5th grade Martial Master realm, he unexpectedly felt a mysterious feeling. It was as if something was right in front of him, but when he touched it, it was as far as the horizon. Although he did not experience this strange feeling in his previous life, he had heard about it more than once. Opening his eyes, Howard looked at the spirit fog in front of him with a shocked expression. His gaze seemed to be able to penetrate the dense spirit fog and see the peak of the 6th grade martial saint expert sitting cross-legged in the center of the treasury. Howard, what happened to you? Clearly, he had not broken through to the 6th grade martial master realm, but he suddenly stopped absorbing spirit energy and looked directly at the spirit fog in front of him. Howard's inexplicable actions made Thaling very puzzled. Close at hand, but far at the horizon. Taking a deep breath, Howard described the feeling he had when he broke through to the peak of the 5th grade martial master realm. Then, he asked Thaling for confirmation. Thaling, you should know what kind of power of law can have such a terrifying ability. Hearing Howard's description of the power of law, Thaling asked excitedly. Howard, you're saying that the peak of the 6th grade martial saint expert in the center of the treasury has been using the devil's sealing curse. The power of law has a power that is close at hand, but far at the horizon? That's right. Nodding, Howard confirmed. Moreover, when you were absorbing the spirit fog to increase your cultivation, you could clearly feel the existence of this power of law, as well as the ability of the power of law. Thaling continued to ask. That's right. Howard continued to nod and confirm. Opportunity, this is a heaven-defying opportunity. After receiving Howard's confirmation, Thaling was so excited that he did not know what to say. After a few minutes, Thaling finally calmed down a little. Then, he said with a serious expression, Howard, don't be in a hurry to leave this place. Use the process of increasing your cultivation base to firmly imprint this feeling of being so close yet so far away in your heart. Because this feeling will increase your chances of comprehending this special power of law by 50 to 60% when you break through to the martial saint realm. 50% to 60% of comprehending the power of laws was close at hand and far away at the edge of the world. The chances of comprehending the power of laws and making a breakthrough were already quite high. It was about the same as a fifth-order pill that assisted in comprehending the power of laws. Moreover, this kind of breakthrough was completely dependent on one's own comprehension. Compared to using pills to break through, one could better unleash the power of laws and raise the level of one's comprehension. After instructing Howard, Thaling's divine sense stopped at the center of the treasury. He was a very handsome expert at the peak of the 6th grade martial saint realm who looked to be in his 30s. Whether it was with the help of pills or his own comprehension, being able to grasp the power of laws close at hand and far away at the edge of the world was enough to prove that this expert at the peak of the sixth grade martial saint realm in front of him was definitely a genius with monstrous potential. It was a pity that such an outstanding genius, who had a great chance of becoming a martial saint in the future, could only use his cultivation for the rest of his life. Thalen could not help but sigh at the cruelty of this world. Closing his eyes again, Yuhauran continued to absorb the dense spiritual mist on the fifth floor of the treasury. He also tried to suppress the speed of his cultivation base's increase as much as possible. He tried his best to feel the power that was close at hand and far away at the edge of the world. Time passed by minute. The experience of the Emerald Mountain Villa and the Echo Mountain Bandits had increased Yuhauran's accumulation by a lot. Even if he deliberately slowed down the increase of his cultivation base, with the help of the pure spiritual mist and the stimulation of the power of laws close at hand and far away at the edge of the world. In less than 30 minutes, his cultivation base smoothly broke through to the early 6th grade martial master. With the breakthrough of the realm, the speed at which the great mystery heart sutra swallowed the spiritual mist suddenly began to accelerate. The spiritual mist that was forcibly swallowed, under the situation where Yuhauran could not suppress it at all, continued to rapidly increase his cultivation base. Then, in less than 10 minutes, his cultivation base was forcibly increased to the middle 6th grade martial master. Facing such a sudden change, Yuhauran thought for a moment and knew that when he broke through the realm, the energy in his body and Dantian instantly soared, stimulating the great mystery heart sutra. Moreover, under the influence of the power of laws close at hand and far away at the heaven realm, the great mystery heart sutra's grade had reached the peak of the heaven realm. It might even have surpassed the heaven realm and reached the divine realm. It instinctively swallowed the pure spiritual mist, as well as the power of laws contained in the spiritual mist. Although a rapid increase in cultivation base was a good thing, it was not something that Yuhauran wanted. Therefore, when he discovered that he could not suppress the great mystery heart sutra's instinctive action of swallowing the spiritual mist, he could only temporarily give up on the opportunity in front of him. His left hand fiercely slapped the ground, and with the force of the slap, his entire body directly crashed into the azure light curtain, borrowing the momentum to leave the 5th floor of the treasury. Without the stimulation of the dense spiritual mist and the power of laws, the great mystery heart sutra gradually calmed down. Yuhauran hurriedly took this opportunity to consolidate his cultivation base after his breakthrough and carefully sense his gains from earlier. In a short 3 minutes, the great mystery heart sutra had forcibly swallowed the spiritual mist and directly raised his cultivation to the high 6th grade martial master. Although forcibly increasing one's cultivation base had some effect on one's foundation, the increase in realm was not much, so the effect on one's foundation was not great. Next, he only needed to consolidate for 1 or 2 days to eliminate this effect. However, Yuhauran's current thoughts were not on his own cultivation, but on the feeling in his heart. This was because when the great mystery heart sutra forcibly swallowed the spiritual mist, it also forcibly integrated a trace of the power of laws contained in the spiritual mist into his own origin power and Dantian. And this kind of forcible integration was dozens of times, or even 100 times stronger than through his own feelings. In other words, although the great mystery heart sutra swallowed the spiritual mist for a very short time, it also made the feeling of being close at hand but far away at the end of the world deeply imprinted in his heart, Dantian, and origin power. And this kind of gain in feeling the power of laws was far more delightful for Yuhauran than the increase in his cultivation base by a small realm. His cultivation base had already broken through, and the feeling of the power of laws was also imprinted in his heart. This time, the training of the Mount Echo Bandits could be considered completed. As for the consolidation of the realm, he needed to return to the Qingyun Peak of the 100 Qi Gate and cultivate calmly. Opening his eyes, Yu Haoran intended to take a look at Ryu to see if she had woken up, but a pair of eyes full of murderous intent was staring at him. Hee, Ryu, you're awake. Seeing that Ryu had woken up early and had murderous intent in her eyes, Yu Haoran greeted her with an awkward smile. You're tuning in to the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.